Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our June 16th meeting. I'm sorry we're running a few minutes late. If you could join us for our flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I do have a report out. Sorry. For dismissal. Sorry, I have to find it. Here we go. Member Chandler moved and member Weil seconded the motion to expel student 8004110 from the schools of the Ojai Unified School District through June 9th, 2022 for violation of Ed Code 48900B. Because due to the nature of the violation, the presence of the pupil causes a continuing danger to the physical safety of the pupil and others, 48915B2. The board approved the expulsion 5-0. There are no emergency additions or modifications to the agenda, so do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor, Kevin?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
Shelley?
Aye.
And Jane, aye. That passes 5-0. A motion to approve the minutes from June 2nd?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor, Kevin?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
Shelley?
Aye.
And Jane, aye. That passes 5-0. Our OUSD volunteer recognition. Dr. Morse, are you gonna introduce?
I am happy to. And actually, I'm going to just share my screen here for one moment. Oh, you know what? There we go. I am not going to share my screen because for some reason that's in the trash, but I would like to introduce our two volunteers of the month today. We have Dean Zitkowski and Stephen Adams. They have, you're not both here because you're photographers, but it actually is nice that you both are here as photographers. They have spent countless hours helping the district, in Dean's case, years, helping the dance program. When I was in my old position, I actually remember asking Mrs. Hoy, who took these gorgeous photographs? And it was Dean. And so we wanted to recognize all the hard work that he's put in to make sure that our programs look spectacular, that our students are showcased in a beautiful way. I know they use those photos as they go on to post-high school programs. And then Stephen Adams just did an amazing job with all of our graduations and promotions this year. We asked him somewhat at the last minute. Our graduations this year have been a work in progress because of COVID. And so we typically would have parents come down onto the field to take pictures. And this year we were trying to have our parents stay off the field for social distancing purposes. And so we were trying to figure that out. And we were able to, Linda Jordan helped to get Stephen to come in. And he did a phenomenal job of taking photos. Our website at Matilaha, where the photos are up, has had 75,000 views or something crazy like that, of parents who are so excited to see these professional photographs of their students in their happy end of year moment. So really want to thank both of you for your contributions to the district, and particularly to our schools and families in capturing these impressive moments.
Dr. Morris,
Mm-hmm.
could I show my favorite picture from
Yes.
the Nordhoff graduation?
Yes.
I thought that captured the whole moment.
Mm-hmm. It's lovely. So families can download pictures and they can see both the walking across the stage and then all the various shots of the entire ceremony. So I wanted to thank you both for all of your work and support of the district and students. If you would like to say anything, Dean, you're welcome to as well.
I'll unmute to say thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you.
You made me cry with that shot, Stephen.
Yes.
Thank you both very much. It's a big thing for families to have that, and we really appreciate it. We hope we see you again. Thank you for joining us this
Thank you
evening.
very much. By the way, your relief, the way you've pulled yourself away from the background is masterful. It's just like an Ansel Adams painting.
That's a filter that became available in February, so you can download that as well.
Next, we move on to general public comments. I do have one from Darius Lange. I would like to see more matrices in the LCAP for baseline, like baseline in IXL and other methods the district is using to track student performance. The data in the LCAP baseline is from state testing pre-pandemic. Second, I would like to see allocation of funds in more detail. Last, I see the allocation of funds seems to be more than total amounts of funds granted. I am not sure if the expanded learning grant is included in the LCAP, and I did not find the plan on the district website. I would also add the release of the budget, LCAP update, and LCAP draft with only 72 hours of review is an indicator of how this district is currently operating. We move on to our employee union president comments. First, we have our CSCA president, Chuck Crawford. Hi, Chuck.
Good evening.
Thank you, Stephen. Goodbye. Sorry.
Hi. Thank you. I really hope that there's participation this evening on the budget and the public comments and that. I was just amazed as a classified employee how many people were commenting on we made it through the year. That's unusual because the classified employees have been the glue to hold this all together in so many ways, as we just described with those people that have stepped up to the plate. And to me, success is every day. It's not just that graduation line. And we see it as a unified district. This last approval of the $700,000 on the backfield at Miramonte, I thank our bond directors for putting together a real budget for real costs as opposed to what was projected in our original Measure J. But having said all of that, administration over the years has looked at our drought situation, and we're having a hard enough time maintaining what we have. To try and take something on new is somewhat frustrating to me. But I also have the view that people view our school district as they drive by Miramonte at 45 miles an hour and say, yeah, it looks great. No, it doesn't. And over the years, we've all known that field and the condition of it, and it's reflective of our whole district. So as classified employees, we continue to work together under some very difficult times, and the budgets always set our priorities. And as we struggle with the resources, we have the conversations, and I've always appreciated this board for having those conversations. But I've never seen so many people, and it's not just us, the school district, it's we as a society, almost like in a reset. And that's why I always say thank you and hope that we still can respect each other. But as we come to this new time, we as classified employees are just seeing things that don't feel right. And there's no particular person to blame. I'm not trying to say that because I do see that we continue to have the honest conversation. Seeing a 100-foot trench up at Summit School when we already had irrigation out there. I know we've said that conversation publicly, and then to see it actually happen, a bit painful because we are all trying to work together. And you've already given examples of how the community stepped up on the pictures there. So as classified, I really hope that people do look at this budget, look at the work that you're doing, because there is a lot happening. I hope we can continue to do it collectively, because the success is daily and it is working collaboratively, so that I hope when people do drive by Miramonte, they see something different than they see now. How we're going to get through the drought is a very big concern to me. I've been through it at least 3 times, and we collectively have been through this. And I'm speaking from it from the, when we're looking at the budgets, I know there's so much on the table, reclassifications for our work that we're trying to do to adapt, to keep things going with the more mandates that have been put on us as a district. And I hope that the public sees that, because it's not always spoken about. But we continue to go forward. And I know the 17th, Cal OSHA's having their vote, possibly to this whole mask idea, because we are under the Cal OSHA effects. So, and we have worked collaboratively on that. So there's a lot of concern and question on the classified side. I just wanted to mention that. And I also want to mention our success. Collectively, we have done a very good job on a very difficult time. So with that, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chuck. And this is our first meeting. We actually have a new OFT president, representative, and our former president, Angie Janassi, is going to say hello and introduce him.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I had said last time that I wasn't going to be back, but I did feel that I needed to introduce Jake Hansen. So I'm here to introduce our new Ojai Federation of Teachers president, Jake Hansen. I'll say that again. Jake and I have worked together for the last 2 years, one as president to site rep, and then in the last year, Jake has been part of our negotiations team. And I have full confidence in Jake taking over my position. And I am very excited about him stepping in and doing this job. So Jake, it's all yours.
Well, thank you, Angie. And I definitely have some big shoes to fill. So some of you I do know, like Kevin, I know you. I don't know everyone on the board and who is here, but I'll probably be getting to know you in the future, most likely. A little bit about myself, just to let you get to know me a little bit better, is I am an Ojai Unified alumni. I went to Matilaha, I went to Nordhoff, and then I have been back and forth between Ojai and Los Angeles throughout the last 2 decades. So I'm definitely consider myself a member of the community. And I'm very happy to be representing teachers now. I wasn't necessarily planning on being a teacher in life, but now that I am one, I have grown a deep appreciation for education, particularly public education, because we do service everyone. And, you know, at the heart of what a school is, you don't have a school without students. And so I've had a unique experience of working both certificated and classified work assignments. And as we all know, because we've all worked in education, the better that we all do, the better our students do. So I'm very happy to be a part of that.
Thank you, Jake, and welcome aboard. Thank you for serving, and thank you, Angie, for your years of service as well. We now move on to board member reports. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say? Kevin, Michael, Rebecca, Shelley?
I would just love to, I was only able to attend 2 graduations. Summit School did a beautiful job, and Nordhoff did as well with lovely performances. And so I would just love to say to the to both of the Munsons that they did a fantastic job honoring their students, and it was very moving. So grateful to be a part of it.
Yes, it was a different year, but we were glad to be semi back where we belonged, and there were some great ceremonies. Our superintendent's report. I think you're muted, Tiffany.
Okay, now I am unmuted and so give me 1 second. I am having, I just was checking to make sure it was working and it was, and then now it's not again. Okay, here we go. So there's our volunteer slide that I could not find earlier, but here's our superintendent's report. So just looking back over the last month, we had our ribbon cutting for the Nordhoff Library and Media Center. You may have seen this picture before. These were our students who were part of the superintendent circle. We were very excited they got to be there for that. We had our Nordhoff prom, and hopefully you read in the Ojai Valley News about how the power went out, but the prom was saved by community members who brought generators, and we were able to continue with the evening. What I think really made a difference was Miss Cole Michaels and her students went around to in the neighborhood to all of the neighbors and actually talked to them before prom happened. And so I think when this happened, everybody knew what was going on and really showed just the amazingness of the Ojai community that they jumped in and saved prom. We also had a COPA visit to Cal Lutheran University, and I'm going to share just a very, very quick video. You will notice from this video that we potentially need to buy Javier a new phone. It was just great to see our students and their parents together working towards a college future. And we were really excited that that was able to happen even this year in COVID. It was a little touch and go about where we would be able to go. And we were able to pull it off in person, which was great. And thank you to Javier for that. We also, I'm not sure if I'm still sharing my screen. Hold on. I can see my screen, but you might not be able to. So we also have had our second week of the Ojai Community Farmers Market. We are working really hard on having students who are either future growers or who have future entrepreneurs having booths. This is a booth that we had with Moon Shadows Boutique, where she was selling upcycled clothing. We were excited to see that program really beginning to blossom. We had, as was mentioned earlier, our graduation. So we had Chaparral and Ojai Adult Education Program. If you look carefully here, you can see Principal Javier Ramirez and teacher Craig Andrews playing a special song for students that was very touching. We had our Summit 5th and 8th grade promotions. Also some student musicians here as well. We had our Summit graduation, our first 3 graduates ever at Summit, which was very exciting. We had our Matilaha Middle School 8th grade promotion, again with our great photographer, Stephen Adams. We had our Nordhoff High School graduation with some great student musicians and performers as well. And also we had live streaming with video production teacher, Jake Hansen, featured here, and some of his students who helped to set that up. So overall, very successful. So grateful we were able to do them in person, and just a great experience, particularly compared to last year, but in general, they were really nice. We also had our clothing closet. We do this quarterly. So whenever we have kind of a change of seasons, we have clothes for families. So far this year, we've had 217 families visit our clothing closet to get free clothing for students. And we had another bike giveaway day right before summer, and we were able to give away 18 brand new bicycles with locks and helmets and everything else. So we look forward to seeing our students out on the roads, riding around during the summer. We also have completed the Matilaha Watershed Mural project. We are still working on the facilities outside of the mural. We have some tables that we'll be putting together and some pavers that are going to go underneath them and some steel umbrellas. They came in missing some parts, so we're working on that, but they will be coming. But the great thing is there's now, or there will be in the next week or two, a metal sign with this QR code. And so if you were to go scan this with your phone, you would come to this website, and every single thing on the mural now has an interactive component to it. And so if you, I might not be able to, so if you click on any one of these things, you can see specifically what they are and you can learn more about them. So it's really become more than just an art project, but also an educational tool for our families and community. So I want to say thank you to Ray Powers for putting this next piece together. This was, it looks very simple, but it was incredibly complicated to get this together. But we're excited to have that next level of the mural up and running. Other amazing events that we had our 8th grade dance. We had our Abriendo las Puertas graduation, and our Citizens Oversight Committee, which I'll hear about a little bit later this evening, has concluded for this year. And then just a few standing ovations because it is now the end of school, but I wanted to share a couple. We have Kevin Conahay, who was nominated by Deborah Kirkland, who's a parent. And you will see Kevin is a jack of many trades, just like Mr. Hansen, who does technology, van driver, and also our drumline teacher at Matilaha. And also standing ovations for Bronwyn Cole-Michaels, Joyce Young, and the whole Nordhoff administration for making prom happen. Here is our what Deb wrote about Mr. McConaughey and the drumline, which again is a new program to us this year. But Mr. McConaughey has built such a positive rapport with the kids and has a gift for teaching. He's positive and encouraging and has high expectations, and they hope the district will continue to support this program, which is our goal as well. And we really love passionate leaders who love what they do and pass that along to our students. So Jake, I'm going to task you with helping Kevin to realize that his dream is to be a teacher and to move forward in this, because I think you can speak to that better than I can. So, and then also from the Niederheiser family about prom. And that is it for my superintendent's report tonight.
Thank you. We move on to our presentations. 5.1 is a music program overview, which will be introduced by Dr. Cheryl Knox and our Miramonte principal, Catherine White.
Thank you. Tiffany, are you going to show the slide presentation? Okay. Yeah, so I am joined here by Catherine White. I'll kind of take the lead and review the program, but she's really the guru of the program. She has been overseeing as an additional role to her role as principal, district coordination of the music program. So she has worked with the teachers over the years and has helped to shape the program through many of its changes. So we're going to start with lower elementary. In lower elementary, we do a program called Education Through Music, and Laura Walters is really the amazing person who makes sure that this program happens in our district. Catherine might be able to speak to it a little bit better than I can, but Education Through Music is a really fun, interactive music program for students where they learn songs and moves. So it's very active. They often need a clear, open space in a classroom. And these songs are usually based in some kind of historical context or teach a deeper meaning about whatever the context is, so that the kids really enjoy it. We do that in TK through 3rd grade. And usually the students go one time per week. Ojai Music Festival writes grants for Bravo Music and also to help fund Education Through Music. And then we also do a special thing in 3rd grade where the 3rd graders go and sing for the seniors. Catherine, did you want to add anything to that program?
No, the only thing I would like to add is with this strange odd year we've had, well, actually more than a year, Laura Walters came in and she recorded lessons for the kids, and it is a highlight of their week, and parents rave about how wonderful it's been to have Laura in their houses with them, and they've learned some of the music too. And then when the kids came back in person and they could actually interact with her in the classroom as a whole group, they were thrilled. She's like a town hero, and she says she walks down the street of Ojai and so many kids know who she is, and they just love her program. So I'm really glad that she stepped up very quickly to make sure that music stayed alive in the elementary schools.
She'll also be working with us in our summer school program. Is that correct?
Yes, should have mentioned that. Thank you.
Okay, so in the upper grades, we have all of our 4th grade students do general music. This is again 1 day a week program. And as well, all of our 5th graders do ukuleles. They all get a ukulele for the year and are able to practice throughout the week and then meet with their teacher once a week. Mr. Manzano has a tough job. He is split between 60% of his role being at elementaries and then 40% at Matilaha. And it's, imagine what he has to do as far as driving around to 4 different sites throughout the week in the mornings to meet all of his 4th and 5th graders at the 4 different elementary sites. And then in the afternoons, work with the 6th through 8th graders at Matilaha. So he gets to know a lot of students in our district. He is a phenomenal teacher and does a great job. I know my daughter had the experience of doing ukuleles, learning ukuleles with him, and she really, it really became a joy for her. In addition to that, 4th through 6th graders have attended the Imagine concert. Of course, we didn't see that in COVID, but that has been funded by Bravo. And then it's a really neat experience that we bring the music van to the elementary sites. This is a great program where students get to see a wide variety of instruments and get to move around different booths and get help. There's a lot of volunteer musicians that come out and they help the students pick up the instrument, use the instrument. And this is where I think students who especially haven't been exposed to a lot of music in their lives or instruments in their lives get to maybe become attached to something that they might want to pick up or pursue in their future.
Cheryl, could you talk about the 4th grade general music curriculum?
I think that Catherine would probably be able to speak to that more. Catherine, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I would certainly do that. Lorenzo's philosophy is he wants, of course, to make the kids, he wants them to really enjoy music and want to sign up for music later on. So they do a lot of rhythm. They do a lot of early music reading. He has the boom whackers. He brings in the sticks. So it's a real foundational program, but it's also just a lot of fun to get the kids engaged and excited about music. And can I add a couple of other things to this slide too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so for 5th grade ukuleles this year, the kids did, we didn't get to do a lot of performing, but this year, he had about 175 students in both 4th grade music and 5th grade music. And again, he was a staple like Laura Walters, who just kept on going, kept putting up those videos, kept opening up his room for the kids to come in and practice and join him. But they did, at the end of the school year, some of the kids were able to play at their promotion, which was really fantastic because we had a live promotion and we had some musicians there. So he had, I know at least at 2 of the schools, some pretty big productions with ukuleles and at least some small group concerts at the other schools. So that was exciting to be able to end the year that way. Oh, and I should also add too that the, oh, I'm so sorry. Somebody just walked in the door and that's the alarm. So we had for the music van, instead of having the full exposure with all the kids getting to play them, Lily and Tally did bring all the instruments into the 5th grade classrooms this year. And so the kids didn't get to play them, but Lillian's a pretty talented individual. And so she was able to play them for the kids so they could hear how each one of them sounded. So that was a real treat for the kids. We found all kinds of ways to just try to make things happen for them.
Yeah, and I have to say, Mr. Manzano we were really lucky. He was also one of our ed tech coaches. He's really gifted when it comes to technology. So he did a great job of posting lessons and, even way back last March of 2020, when we first went into COVID, he was one of the first ones to be able to continue to post his lessons online for kids to be able to follow along and continue with their music instruction. Okay, so at Matilaha, we offer 4 sections of music. 2 of those are taught by Mr. Manzano and 2 of those are taught by Mr. Wagner. So Mr. Wagner also does a difficult job of a split shift, 2 periods at Matilaha and then his other 3 periods at Nordhoff. And you can see here that we offer intermediate band and then beginning band and strings for 6th graders. The reason that he's able to do those 2 is that in our 6th grade program, students only go to PE every other week. They have a different expectation per ed code for instructional minutes of PE. And so they go to PE 1 week and then they offset it with an elective. And so, for example, 1 week, Mr. Manzano teaches beginning band. And then when those kids are at PE, the following week, he has his strings students. And then we have Mr. Wagner teaching the advanced band for 8th graders, and then intermediate and advanced strings for 7th and 8th graders. Choir is not currently offered at Matilaha. It has been in the past. Enrollment did dwindle a bit, and it has been difficult to keep choir. But we are very excited that Mrs. Dvorak, through her career and technical education theater course, drama course, is going to be offering a musical this year and hopes to continue that throughout future years. Any comments or questions about Matilaha?
I want to make a comment. I'm hoping that some of you were able to see the virtual concert that Mr. Lozano put on with his students. It was very sweet. Then those were all the in-person students. And then also the 8th grade students were able to perform at promotion. So if you were there, you got to see the 8th graders, which was really fun.
Okay, so Nordhoff. So as I was saying, Mr. Wagner teaches 3 periods at Nordhoff. 2 of those are within the school day. That's the symphonic band and wind ensemble, which are co-enrolled in the same section, and then string orchestra. And then his final section that he teaches is actually in the after school hours, which is marching band. And then he also has colored guard, of course, supporting that program. Those students are also involved. So that is what we offer at Nordhoff. Catherine, did you want to add anything there?
You know, I really don't have anything to add. Thank you.
All right, and then we're very lucky with the addition of Mr. Andrews, who is very musically talented at Chaparral. He has been offering the students music production and guitars. This isn't an entire section by any means like we would see at Nordhoff or Matilaha, but at Chaparral, students have the ability to earn elective credits by engaging in these sorts of programs. And so they can meet with him at all sorts of times. Sometimes it's during the school day, but mostly following the school hours, they would meet with him and be able to earn elective credit by engaging in these 2 elective programs. And then lastly, we have Mr. Ramirez, of course, providing a mariachi program for our entire K-12 community. I know that that's really enjoyable. He often jokes about how long he'll be able to continue to do it, but I know that it is his passion, and I expect that he will probably never give it up. So we also have that to offer our students.
One of the things that we're working on is how to promote this program for all students in the district who'd like to join. It's a little difficult with COVID. I think they met one time and performed, but next year that'll be something that we're working on expanding access for throughout the district.
So Catherine, I would like to ask you, so I was disappointed in the low numbers at the high school. And I mean, obviously when we have declining enrollment, numbers will go down, even if you have everything perfectly. But I'm wondering, it feels to me from what I am exposed to that the issue is that our students in elementary are no longer exposed to instruments except the ukulele. Do you have that same sense, or?
I think, no, there's definitely a shift. So we're not starting them as young. I don't know that that's a detriment, because I think that, you know, we're trying to think back to pre-COVID. We had a lot of the kids in the music program. If you think back to when Thomas was there, you know, it's just, we forget that there was a very robust program before COVID hit. And so it's different. We are a smaller school district than we were before. We don't, you know, when you start, I know this at the high school, you start getting into more singletons and kids have more of a conflict with their scheduling and it's harder to put it all together and they have to make a choice. And so I know that's a reality of what happens as we get smaller, but I don't know that I would say it's because we're not starting so young. I don't think we've had enough time yet with just starting them with the music at the middle school to really say that yet without having what we just experienced with COVID.
Yeah, and I would add, I think that over the course of all my years in education, one of the things that really builds a program is a really strong teacher. And one of the things that we've seen in the elementary program, especially when we offered all the different instruments, is we saw a huge turnover in teaching staff. It is not an easy job to commute to all the different sites. And then on top of that, to teach so many different things. And so I think that what I'm hoping and what I do think will happen is as Mr. Manzano has more time to build his program in the elementary schools. And again, he hasn't been with us very long and most of that has been COVID time. So, but once he really is a dynamic teacher. And so once he has more time with those elementary students and then they follow him to Matilaha, I think we're going to see our program build as we build stability with the teachers.
One thing about the ukuleles is I think it really gives the kids equal access to instruments fairly easily, and parents aren't intimidated with trying to figure out how to get an instrument in the hands of their children if they're a Spanish only speaker. And so I think it really does provide equal opportunity. And I think that's a real beauty of doing it the way we're doing it. And I agree, Cheryl, Lorenzo is very dynamic. The kids really enjoy him. So I'm optimistic that once we move forward and COVID is behind us, we'll start building our program again.
I'll just jump in and say that anecdotally from the kids that in my family, nephews and my own kids, that when they started in elementary school and it wasn't consistent, they were very reluctant to join in Matilaha. Whereas if they had just started in Matilaha and had the consistency and the regular practice, then they may have continued. But that, I think you're right, Cheryl, that inconsistency and that difficulty in keeping somebody in that position has its downside.
Mm-hmm. We've been through 4 teachers in the 7 years that I've been back in the district.
I was just trying to remember how many it was. Yeah, it's been 4. Yeah.
I just want to say, I had asked for a presentation on music, and I really appreciate it. One of the reasons why I asked for it was because I think music, one, in the experience that I've had, and I've heard your pitch, Catherine. I wish we could have done your TED Talk tonight on the importance of music, because I've heard you give that pitch, and I really completely agree with it. That kids who have music as part of their academic life, I think it informs so many other aspects of academics, certainly math. But also just discipline. I was talking to Bill Wagner the other day, and we're talking about how, when someone learns to play an instrument, a really interesting thing happens in their mind, which is they see that even though yesterday they were just as bad as they are today, and tomorrow they feel just as bad as they were yesterday, and the next day they feel just as bad, guess what? Some weird thing happens where they actually end up being super competent playing whatever that instrument is. And that arc is applicable to life. And someone who has learned to play an instrument knows that if they put in the time and effort, even though it doesn't feel like anything is happening, it is happening. And they will learn it, and they will improve, and they will acquire the skill. So, I also think that, I've known a number of people who had the resources to go to private schools in our valley, and the truth of the matter is, take it from whom it comes, but I think, we have, regardless of private or public, we have the best music program available, and I'd love to make sure that keeps that we keep having that we don't lose that status.
Well, having had a child go through our program, I too can attest for how wonderful it has been through all these years. And when Cheryl says that it's really not having the stability of having the same person in the program for, that many years, it does impact it. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And so I think Lorenzo's here to stay for a while. And I think now that we have him as a full-time teacher, that's made a huge difference. And I'm optimistic that we'll continue to, we'll see an uptick in our music participation.
Catherine, when you said something about Singleton at the high school, were you referring to the reduction to one elective?
No. I just mean I've just watched it over the years where kids have had to make choices because there have been some periods that are only offered at one time and it conflicts with another class. So that's what I meant by singletons.
Yeah, because I do have concerns about that. I mean, right when we sort of made that decision, we hit COVID, and it'll be interesting to see what, last year we were asking as a board, how many requests were made for that extra class and how many were granted. And I hope, I haven't thought of this until this moment, but I hope that Mr. Munson can give us that information again in August. So it's really important in our music program, I think, how it affects our music program.
And are looking at course schedules just recently, I believe that we were able to accommodate all of the band requests. I can go back and double check as we get a little bit further, but that's a program that we definitely support. And so we I think and it can be a little bit bigger. So I don't think that we are not approving requests for band.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you so much, Catherine, for being here. And I think as a board, we all are very aware of our great program in music and support it, and our community supports it. And so we really want to keep going. So thank you to the Bravo, the Ojai Music Festival, and all our supporters.
Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
We move on to 5.2, which is our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Guiding Coalition update. It's a mouthful.
Yes. So I will start here. And first, I would like to say that, last year, all of our guiding coalitions had been meeting throughout the year. And then when COVID hit, in fact, I think that we closed schools March 13th, and on March 12th, we had our guiding coalition meeting for our environmental stewardship. So that was actually the last meeting. But this coalition earlier this year said, we'd really like to meet again. And so this one has been active this year. It was really the only one that we could manage kind of in the midst of COVID. And then just recently, the Wellness Guiding Coalition started up again. And so we look forward to next year being able to rekindle all of them around our four primary values of the district. And so here's our annual.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think the events of last summer also made the community really feel like this wasn't something that could be set aside even for COVID.
Right, that absolutely. So these are the members of this particular guiding coalition, and they have met pretty much every Thursday, either in a full group or in a subcommittee for pretty much this entire year. We've added a few members over the course of this year, and then next year we will invite them to participate again, and we will also, if we have space available, open up for more members. So this particular guiding coalition has a subcommittee around events who this year organized the A Place at the Table events. We have a subcommittee around curriculum, and we have a subcommittee around the strategic plan. And I can hear Michael in my head saying, when is the strategic plan going to be done? And I would say it's a significant project and a priority over the summer. We just weren't able to complete that work by the end of the school year. But over the summer, where there's a little bit more space to focus on this, we hope to have the strategic plan back to you later in the year. So we kind of start every meeting by thinking about small wins that we've had in the district, and that's just my term, but things that we Little minor things that we've done that can have a big impact for students and families, and things that we've been able to either just tweak a little bit to be more inclusive, or things that we have been able to improve our processes. So there's a number of different things, and I'm not going to read through this list, but I did want to share that in general, what we are looking at as a philosophy is kind of a push-in service model. And I know that's an old term that's related to special education, but the idea is, rather than waiting for families to come to us and say, I have this need, we are trying to reach out to families continuously and consistently to ask them what they need, regardless of, what language they may speak, regardless of if they're free and reduced lunch eligible. In general, our goal is to reach out to families and say, what can we do to help your student be successful? And again, if you think back to our vision for the district, that whole center part of our little flower chart is really about how students feel when they're at school. And so these are a number of improvements that we've made that hopefully will have an impact there. You'll also see, in addition to doing kind of push-in services for families, really working on making sure that we have programs that are inclusive, that all students can participate in. So Math League, which you'll see again, maybe you will see it later again tonight in your board goals. National Junior Honor Society, which is not just about academics, but also character, citizenship, and service. Even personal calls to all families who qualified for free and reduced lunch or homeless foster services, actually, for the School on Wheels grant participation, which provides tutoring over the summer. So just making sure that families know about opportunities that we have, and then making it easy for them to participate. One of the things that I think was a good win for us is we will cover AP exam fees. So students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch get a discounted rate on their AP exams, but then also Family Fund will cover the rest of the cost for an AP exam. But rather than making families ask, we actually reached out to families and said, hey, your student is eligible for an AP exam. Can we help you with the cost? And so I think we were able to have students participate in AP exams that potentially wouldn't have otherwise. We also received a few grants relative to this particular area, and we're looking forward to writing some more. And then we have a few what I consider to be big wins. So one is our English Learner and Family Support Coordinator who was hired, Alex Mejia, who has already been busy planning a way for next year in ways that we can support families. In our board goals, you'll see that we are turning her office into essentially a parent support center where families who need help, again, not necessarily free and reduced lunch families or families who are Spanish language preferred, but any family could come and say, hey, I need help getting signed up with Parent Square. Can you help me? So we're setting it up so there's some resources, some literature available, a TV screen so that we can do any kind of technology assistance that families might have or might need, and a place for families to go here at the district office. We also had 4 A Place at the Table events, which had approximately 250 attendees. We look forward to continuing those next year. The Guiding Coalition decided that that's a program we want to continue. We did not get to all of the commemorative observances. We kind of generally follow along with the state and national observances. So Black History Month, American Indian Heritage Month, Asian Pacific Heritage Month, Jewish American Heritage Month. We did not get to National Disability Awareness Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, Pride Month. So there's some additional work that we'd like to do next year. We also hired an executive assistant for my office here who is a certified translator. So we're excited to do things like re-record our messages on the phone so that they're in both English and Spanish. So families who speak Spanish and need to, navigate around through our phone system are able to get that information easily. And then we also curated a curriculum, a supplemental curriculum for Black history, women's history, et cetera. And we look forward to continuing that work as well next year. This is an area that I was very excited about, our Nordhoff English department. We went to them and said, we would like to see diverse cultures represented. And what would that look like for you? And so they came back with this particular statement that they worked on. And I just want to be clear, this is in no way related to critical race theory. This is really more of just ensuring that our students have exposure to a variety of different voices from around the world. So they created a great list of novels that they will be looking into and working out of. And they are helping to work on what that curriculum might look like for next year. And the Guiding Coalition will support that work by helping to vet books, to read them, looking for podcast guest speakers that could identify or potentially support those units of study and people from our own community, reaching out to other schools or programs, and then just helping to research that.
Tiffany, before you move on, I think this is really cool, but I wonder if you could explain how much time one unit of study per grade means.
It will depend on the unit of study, but the book list is pretty comprehensive. I would say there's probably 25 to 30 different novels on there that you might see throughout the course of your high school English program, but it varies a lot on the amount of time. When we brought this back to the Guiding Coalition, the first thing that they said was, great, what about all the other areas and all the other schools? We said, we're one step at a time. So we definitely will be looking into and working with our other departments. But we started with English because we have really phenomenal teachers. We do in everywhere, but our English teachers have already been kind of working towards this goal, and we're ready to take this next step kind of officially, and are excited to present this to you as their resolution. And so our goal now is to support them with training and how to really do this well, and how to do this in a way that allows for rich discussions with our students. And then finally, our goals for next year. Again, working on our strategic plan. We are working, as I've mentioned, on a dual enrollment ethnic studies class that would be optional for students to take, but it would be for college credit. So it would meet that requirement that they now have in four-year colleges in California. Continuing with our A Place at the Table events. We are still committed to Spanish program at our elementary schools. That was a plan last year, and then it got delayed because of COVID. We just did not have the capacity to implement that, but that is back on the back in the planning work. And then I just wanted to point out the second from the bottom, Spanish class for staff members. So our staff members have been asking us, can you help us learn Spanish so that we can communicate with students at school? And so we're looking forward to developing a program for that. And that's an update on the work that we've done this year. I want to thank Jane for being on this particular Guiding Coalition and for contributions and support.
Thank you. I would like to also thank Lori Hammer, who's done a ton of work in looking for book ideas, and Catherine, is it McInnes? What's her last name? Just amazing time that they've put in helping to find resources. That's been amazing. And I realize your comment about critical race theory reminded me that there was a public comment that I missed earlier. It's from Carl Hindman. It is, I am deeply opposed to racism in our schools. I am particularly opposed to any policies, procedures, or agenda that promote racism. I have investigated proposals to teach critical race theory and the 1619 project in our public schools. I view both of these programs as promoting race distinctions and identifying and dividing people based on race. We are an inclusive society, and there is no place for racial discrimination in our schools. We must not allow these theories to be taught to our children. Are there any other comments about the presentation or for next year thoughts?
I am happy to speak up. I to find this work so critical to the health of our district and for all of our students, but especially our students of color. And I'm really excited to see what work comes next year when we're back in school and we're not restricted by COVID and we're able to do more work in this area. But I think you guys have made some pretty big strides in such a trying year. So I appreciate the work you guys are doing on this. And just the thought that it is a thought that comes into every piece of what we're doing in the district, which I love. So thank you.
I'll just chime in and at the risk of repeating, say thank you. But also thank you to everyone who serves on the coalition. We know everybody has a life, and it is a very consuming life, and we appreciate the time you carve out for our kids, because this is a really important area and we're very aspirational here. So I just thank everybody.
Yeah, thanks everyone for your time, and particularly you, Jane. You got a few things going on these days.
I'll jump in and offer my thanks as well, but also a suggestion I heard. It sounded like, we have the English literature books from our high school level, and it sounded like you said that the coalition was asking about the younger kids and books for the younger kids. And it made me think that there's opportunities there for with our friends group, the Friends of the Library, may be interested in helping with books for the elementary level. And I noticed that the Women's Fund also opened up their grants for next year today. So possible avenues for funding for some of those programs as well.
Great idea. And also the group has discussed more of the sort of place at the table for our students, as well as, some of the students did attend some of the place at the tables, but maybe a little more focused specifically for students. Thank you, Tiffany. We'll move on to our consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve? Go ahead, Shelley. Shelley moved to approve, and I'll second. All those in favor? Kevin?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
Shelley?
Aye.
And Jane, aye. That passes 5-0. 6.3.1 and 6.3.2. Do we want to take these together? We'll just take them separately there quickly. 6.3.1, Matilah course title changes. And this is aligning.
Dr. Knox, would you like to take this one?
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute. Sometimes it's a very difficult task. So we did a review of the course titles for special education, and one of our big goals is to remove any indicators in the title that a student is receiving special education services, but we also wanted to take the opportunity to align the title so that there's some cohesion between the courses that are offered at Matilah and Nordhoff.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
No. Go ahead, Michael.
All those in favor? Kevin?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
Shelley?
Aye.
And Jane, aye. That passes 5-0. And I guess the same, obviously, discussion or explanation follows for 6.3.2. So I'll go ahead and move to approve for that. Is there a second?
I should just add that in addition to the special education changes, there are some CTE courses. They've been discussed here before, but we've actually fleshed out the actual course descriptions, and they're also on this item.
I'll second.
All those in favor, Kevin,
Yes.
Michael,
Aye.
Rebecca,
Aye.
Shelley,
Aye.
and Jane, aye. That passes 5-0. Our Citizens Oversight Committee Annual Report. We have our committee chairperson, Bill Norris. And I don't know, Adam is here, Adam Dutter, one of our bond managers, and they're here to discuss the report.
Thank you. I'd just like to highlight what's in the report, the three major findings, and that's that the board proceeds were expended only for the purposes set forth in Measure J. No exceptions were reported in the financial audit or performance audit conducted, and the audit firm sampled 50.6% of the total expenditures, which is, as I understand it, a little higher than usual. Other than that, I would also like to thank both our bond managers, Adam and Alan, for their assistance to the committee. They certainly have made our job much, much easier. And I also would especially like to thank Kathy Smith, who also provided, especially me, kept me on the straight and narrow in my job. So that's all I have to say. Thank you. I don't know if Adam wants to add anything to that.
No, I'd just like to thank everybody on the Citizens Oversight Committee for their time, and Bill for stepping up to chair that committee. We appreciate it. And we hope to see everybody on the committee renewing their term if they'd like. And anybody else who's watching who'd like to be there, we're taking applications.
I have one on my desk.
Fantastic.
From a Mr. Norris, so.
Oh, perfect.
I've had so much fun. I'm going to do it again if I get so elected.
Yeah, one of the just to touch on real quick, one of the really fun things we did was we were able to do the campus tours once it was safe to go on, and it was great actually to kind of show off things that we've been working on. That was a good time. So we appreciate your time, Bill, and everybody else on the committee.
Yeah, those campus tours, I think, were very, very informative. It certainly gave me an insight that I didn't have before.
Thank you.
I would just like to say thank you to you for chairing that COC committee and for all your work on Measure K and getting that passed and helping us with that too. So very appreciative for all you've done for the district.
Well, there are a lot of people that should be thanked for the Measure
K.
I was a minor part of that.
I appreciate your help in that.
Thank you.
So I also want to say thank you. Our oversight committee is really important in terms of building our credibility and how we've been entrusted with our bond. And you guys have held us to it and more, and we really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
I would echo everybody's responses. It is lovely and super needed to have our community members involved in how we spend this money. And we're so grateful for your time and energy and for applying again to do this. You are not a glutton for punishment. You're a very lovely human who's donating their time to us. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the kind words.
Thank you, Bill and Adam, and for all the Citizens Oversight Committee members. It was wonderful to hear again that we are following the rules and using our money wisely, and that the auditors felt so as well. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the COC report.
I'd move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, Kevin?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
Shelley?
Aye.
And Jane, aye. That passes 5-0. Now our big item one of our two big items for tonight are public hearing on the proposed budget.
So I would like to start by introducing Katrina Madden, our new Assistant Superintendent of Business and Administrative Services. She is going to be here tonight, and she's going to take some pieces of this, but recognizing that this is that her job hasn't even started yet until July 1st. she's just been kind enough to help with this process. She will take some, and then I will also be assisting her as we go through this. So this is just in terms of the process. This is our public hearing that we have, and then the final approval of this budget, if there are any changes that you would like us to make, would be next Monday on the 21st. And so you'll see the agenda for that coming out very shortly. Actually, I believe tomorrow. So that's kind of the turnaround on this. We have to have everything approved and to the county by June 30th. So that's where we are. And with that, I am going to turn it over.
Is what you're showing us, is that, so the link is not currently working on the agenda? Is this exactly the link?
No.
So if I click on 6.4.2 under public hearing, I get, this is in the trash.
Okay. I know that Marissa is listening right now because she is helping to take minutes for us. And so I would ask Marissa if you can help to re-upload that link, because that's a level beyond what I can do while I'm in this particular meeting. But
I do have a public comment on that. Should I do that afterwards, or?
However, if you'd like to do it, read it during the public hearing, if you want to open the public hearing and then read the public comment,
okay.
That is fine. Did the public comment come in the time frame?
It's close enough. I'm gonna take it.
I didn't check on it.
I'll move to open the public hearing.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Kevin?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
Shelley?
Aye.
Jane? Aye. That passes 5-0.
And I'll just say to Marissa, if you can text me when the link is up, that would be great. Thank you.
So this public comment is from Philip Begley, 6.4.2. I will be offering a few of my comments and suggestions on the proposed budget as presented, but would like to first note the documents and information provided are insufficient. Because the document does not include a comparison of the revenues and expenditures for existing years required by Ed Code 42103 and 42122, it is very difficult to understand where cuts or additional monies are being proposed. The proposed budget is not on a CDE approved form, and even in the same format as last year, making it very hard to tell if information is missing. For example, one thing I noticed is that last year's proposed budget contained projections for the FTE reductions in personnel, but that information is not included here. Why not? Notably, the 2021 proposed budget called for a reduction of 15.67 FTE, including 1.31 in management, and it was anticipated that 21-22 would have a reduction of 12.4 FTE. Given the reduction in the budget for classified and certificated salaries, I assume that reductions are planned. What are they? As for the information in the budget, I would like more information about the proposed expenditures regarding COVID-related revenue. Regarding ESSER specifically, what materials, supplies, and equipment are proposed for this upcoming year, accounting for $1.6 million? Why is $1 million in professional services, not certificated or classified salaries, justified? Why do we need to spend $200,000 on communications specifically? And regarding the other COVID funds under 7422 and 7425, what is actually being proposed for that 1.5 million in materials, supplies, equipment? No information is provided. For the budget in general, why has the book and supplies expenditure increased from about 1.28 million last year to over 4.5 million now? That is a huge increase. Likewise, what is the rationale for increasing the services and other expenditures from about 2.6 million to now over 4.5 million? What is the equipment tagged over $500 UND mean in category 4400? And why is 2.4.5 million planned for professional consulting services? What caused the unduplicated pupil percentage to drop from 50 to 40%? There are no dates provided on the general fund multi-year projection summary.
With that, I will jump into this. So this is really
So before you do that, Tiffany, should we close the public hearing? Or does it stay open? I thought it was just for public comment. Do we need to do that or am I out of order?
Either way.
Then I'll move to close the public comment.
I will make the condition that I will possibly consider reopening it if someone shows up at the district office. Thank you, Linda, for covering the boardroom.
Then we can leave it open. That's fine.
Let's leave it open, just in case. I did have someone inquire about coming in, but that was for the LCAP, but just in case.
So we have tonight just some excerpts from the revised budget document that was posted. And so this is not the entirety of the memo, but if you would like to see the memo, I would be able to pull that up. But these are just some of the key pieces. And so Katrina, do you want to start with this slide, and I will help you out as I can. And then I also would just like to share that I believe the link has been fixed and boardable, hopefully.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present the proposed budget to you. I'm sorry if my voice is a little off tonight. I'm getting over a cold, so hopefully we'll get through this and no problems. The information that you're being provided tonight for the upcoming budget is based on the key budget assumptions that you see in front of you. These key budget assumptions are what are used to develop the proposed budget for this year and every school year. One of the big pieces that you'll see on the revised budget that you had received was the governor's May revise that included the statutory COLA and one-time super COLA of 5.07%. Our estimated district enrollment for next year is 2,308. And I believe at the time that we put out the information on unduplicated pupil percentage, we just didn't have enough information to be clear on what our unduplicated pupil percentage is, and it's actually at 48%. Tiffany, did you want to add anything else?
Yep, so these are just the rest of our assumptions. You'll see in our multi-year projection some more information about the PERS and STIRS employer increases. One thing I do want to mention is the so-called super COLA of 5.07% is really one-time monies. And so we just want to be really thoughtful as we look ahead to spending our one-time monies on kind of one-time expenditures. And so keeping that in mind, I would also share that one of the things that you notice is compared to last year's budget, this is of course significantly better. The state of California has seen some great revenue this year, surprisingly, but it's much improved over where we were a year ago. And so you have seen budgets in the past that show cuts, proposed cuts. At this point, we don't have proposed cuts because our revenues we're able to build up our reserve. So you'll see that in year 3, we do have some deficit spending projected, but not until then. And so lots changes every year in the budget. So it's really a snapshot in time. And where we are at this snapshot in time is that we don't have any significant staffing reductions to make in order to meet our multi-year projections in the next 3 years.
On this slide, what you're able to see is the proposed revenues for the 2021-2022 school year. And the proposed revenues are based on the key budget assumptions that we previously reviewed. The majority of our income comes from the local control funding formula, the LCFF, and it counts for 69.24% of our total revenues. Next, you can see that the federal revenue, that's our second biggest income, and that's about 12.63% of our income. And some of the larger funded programs that come under federal revenue are special education, Title I, Title II, Title III, and Medi-Cal. After that, you'll see the other state revenues besides LCFF, and some of those revenues that we include are for the mandated cost reimbursement, which is received through the mandated block grant, lottery funding, the unrestricted and the restricted portions, and these additional state revenues represent an additional 6.98% of the total revenues that we receive. And then finally, we have our local revenue, which represents about 2.31%
So just a couple of things to share. One, we're still working on the link. And two, Katrina, I'm not sure if you can turn up your volume or your microphone, or if it's easier to hear. And so we'll continue to sort out those technical details there.
So this is what you were pointing out in terms of the public comment question was, why aren't there FTE reductions shown? That's because of this increase from last year.
Right. But you would see that if we didn't have our COVID revenue, it would be a different picture. So we really are relying on that COVID revenue for some of the projected expenses that we have this year.
I just have a quick question about the assumptions. Is the 3-year assumption is the state assumption?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so everything that we have built this budget around, all of the assumptions are based on the Department of Finance projections. So, you know, the COLA for next year will likely not be what the COLA is projected today, a year out, but we have to put something in, so they tell us what to put in, and that's what we use. Okay, any other questions on the proposed revenues? And I'll go over COVID revenues specifically in just a moment. I also wanted to, I'm so sorry, Taiwo, I missed introducing you at the beginning. Taiwo has spent countless hours working on this budget to get it ready, and is also available to answer specific detailed questions if we have some more of those. So here's our COVID revenues. We have several pots of COVID money that we've talked about over the last year. These are the ones that we have identified for next year. So we have ESSER 3. These are just the essentially the budget codes. So we have ESSER 3, which is about $3 million. And there's a plan that's due for ESSER 3 upcoming. And so some of the specifics around what are we going to spend this money on have to come through the development of that plan. And so you'll see that we have some placeholders, which I'll identify in just a moment. And it's really because we just put it in a large bucket. And then as we go through the plan, as we look at enrollment, as we look at staffing, as we look at our needs next year, we'll start to really dig in and identify more specifically where these funds would be going. So the ESSER 3 plan is due, I think it's July 7th, is that right, Marilyn? Because everybody is working in education the first week of July. Right. And so that's in progress. We also have here our in-person instruction grant, and we have our expanded learning opportunities grant. And then we expect to have carry forward as well from our current COVID funding, but we don't close the books really until September, at which time we would know how much money we have remaining from the funds that we've received this year.
Can you give an example of what expanded learning opportunities might be?
Yeah, so you approved that plan actually, I think last month, and it's really things like summer school. So even though we partner with Learn for Life to fund our summer school program, there are some pieces that aren't funded. So for example, instructional aids aren't funded through Learn for Life. Some of the other opportunities that we're including in summer, we're really trying to expand in some areas, some of which we can fund in Learn for Life, and some of which are great uses of our expanded learning opportunities. We also have next year, we're looking at some additional programming that we could have at the elementary level. We are looking at reducing class sizes in our elementary programs. And so that might be something that we would use some of these funds on. We're not sure which bucket of money yet. And we're not sure, for example, how many teachers that would be to reduce class sizes, because we're still working on a more solid projection of enrollment. Our enrollment numbers are a little bit slower in coming this year. I think a lot of families are waiting to see what happens with COVID, what happens with masks, which of course
is happening at the state level and not specifically policies that we make here. So as I think we get a little bit closer, what is happening, the trend statewide, is that we're seeing a greater increase in kindergarten enrollment than we saw even a month ago or a few weeks ago when we were working on this budget.
Tiffany, can I ask a question about that? When you say programming at the elementary level, it's very specifically programming to mitigate the loss from COVID, not ongoing programming like our Spanish classes or things that we would have to fund continually. Is that correct, or am I misunderstanding?
We generally, these are one-time funds, so we want to have fund one-time programs, but these don't all have to be about learning loss specifically. They can be generally about just expanded opportunities for students. So one thing that we're working on is our teachers next year have their early release date at elementary so that they have, they can do their professional learning community work. And so we are working to have programming for students potentially when our teachers go to their professional development weekly and their collaborative work, our students might be able to stay on campus and have some expanded learning opportunities there. Some of those might be specifically related to academic skill development, and some of them might just be fun opportunities that we wouldn't have elsewhere. Those aren't mandated. We could continue those the next year, we could not, but those would be opportunities for students that are an appropriate expenditure of these funds.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this slide? Okay. I told Katrina that I would work on the COVID expenditures because they're a little complicated, and I've been doing this for this year. So as I mentioned, these are really just placeholders. They are not exactly where these would go. We actually, in fact, know that a significant portion of this will go to staffing. We just don't have those exact numbers about how much staffing. It'll be a mix of certificated and classified, as I mentioned. We need to, we'd like to hire some additional teachers to lower elementary class sizes, but we also have some shifts for teachers in the district. And so whether, you know, we're hiring new teachers or moving teachers is still kind of all in progress. So what we did for this budget is the amount of COVID expenditures equals the amount of COVID revenue. And so you don't see that our budget is artificially inflated when you look at our overall numbers by COVID, because we have taken out the COVID revenue in expenditures. They're just not in the specific categories. So what you would see at next up in terms of where COVID money is going to be going, you'll see our ESSER 3 plan in July. And then at first interim, you'll see a lot more details and specific information as we get closer and start the school year. So these are, don't panic. These are all just general. And just in terms of communications, one thing that is a little bit difficult is these are really broad categories. So professional services incorporates so many things that you wouldn't necessarily think of for professional services. It's the same thing with communication. So communications is really internet, hotspots, things like that. And so those are significantly expensive. Our hotspots are very expensive. And so those are things that fall into that communications bucket. Same thing with equipment. Equipment has, you know, hundreds of vendors and hundreds of different items that are in that equipment that you might not necessarily think of as equipment. So
how about professional services? Are you talking about just instructional services?
Yeah.
Is that different?
So professional services can include, for example, any contracts that we have. It can include our students who attend special education programs at Ventura County Office of Education schools. They can include our contracts with the county to run our escape program. So there's a lot of different things that fall into that professional services
category as well that you might not think of as kind of traditional professional services. So again, hundreds
Does that also include professional like our professional learning days?
No, those are professional learning days. Remember, we added 2 of those to the calendar next year and 2 the following year. Those actually fall under our salaries because they end up being additional money for our teachers and classified staff. So those are salaries.
But Tiffany, if we bring in professional services to deliver the professional development, like guest speakers, then that would fall under this category.
Yes. Sorry, Jane. I wasn't sure if you that's probably actually what you were asking about. But.
So it does seem, I mean, I think the public comments and myself, sort of like, what? It just seems like a lot of money without specifics, or the specific of equipment kind of overlaps with communication, because our equipment obviously could be some Chromebooks, but it could be some hotspots. And so basically what you're saying is ask me those questions after we see the ESSER 3rd in July.
Yes.
Tiffany, what would be the category? Well, you're almost there. If you go back, sorry, where we just were with the
forward.
Sorry, forward. Well, the one we were just looking at with the professional services broken out, and why isn't there a rubric that would cover, extra certificated or classified services under there? Just, I understand we don't know yet exactly where it's going, but I thought you mentioned that you thought some of the money would go in that direction.
We're not sure exactly how much. So these are, again, just really general placeholders. When you put salaries in, those are tied to people. And so we didn't want to be essentially kind of messing with the people categories until we have more specifics about who and where and how much. It was easier to put them into these big categories. In Escape, which is the program so these are all Excel documents, and then this all goes into Escape. But in Escape, we have very specific like personnel records, which are a lot more fussy than kind of, materials, things like that. So it will move into the salaries. It's just not at this time there.
So there is a placeholder. I mean, let's say we add, 3 elementary teachers district-wide. There is a place somewhere in here that could show up.
Yeah, these are just the ones where we put the money for right now to, again, big picture. What we're trying to do today is to show COVID money in and COVID expenses out. So it's a wash. So our budget isn't artificially inflated either way in terms of expenditures or in terms of revenue, right? And so like those 2 extra days, we know we just paid for 2 extra days, which is, probably, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Taiwo, but between $200,000 and $300,000 probably. So we know there are going to be expenditures there, but we're just not sure exactly how much. So we could have just as easily put, this $1 million for professional services, or this, $1 million for equipment. We could have easily put it in salaries, but we wanted to actually you'll see in a later slide, we are showing you the percentages of things in the total budget. And we wanted to give you kind of an estimate of where we are truly right now today in terms of staffing. And you'll see that in just a moment.
I think it's important to, as I'm dealing with the ESSER 3 in my regular position, that most districts don't really, they're just now developing a plan to be able to use the money, and that this budget is a living document that changes as the needs of the district changes, because often we can't predict within today what's going to happen in the fall, because we could never have predicted what happened this school year, and the budget has to change to match the needs, not the other way around. We're going to not spend it because it wasn't in the budget. We're going to change the budget to match the needs of the district as they come up.
So looking in general at our proposed expenditures, and this is what I was just sharing. Katrina, do you mind if I do this slide since I was just talking about this particular
fine.
piece? Okay, you're welcome to if you want. So I wanted to be able to share with you where we are in terms of certificated and classified salaries. And then in your budget document that you have in the couple of attachments, you'll see that the percent of budget is off in terms of we typically spend between 80 and 85% of our total revenues on staffing. And so if you were to add this up, it's only around 70%. The reason is because we stuck all that extra COVID money into the non-salary, non-people related areas. And so if we were to look at these percentages of certificated salaries, classified salaries, employee benefits, without the COVID dollars, you'll see we're kind of right around where we need to be. We also anticipate that this will go up as we put the money where it really will belong and where it needs to be once we have some additional information and some pieces fall into place. Any questions on this? Okay. All right, Katrina, back to you.
Okay, so basically the general fund summary is a summary of the information that we've reviewed thus far and the information that you had in your proposed budget packet. Starting with our beginning balance and then taking the revenues and the expenditures, we're estimating a positive ending balance for the 21-22 school year. We'll have a net increase in the fund balance of $1,795,699, which will put our adjusted ending balance at $3,459,275. And that's the figure that we have to take when we're looking at our 3% reserve that we're required to have. And based on that number, the district is required to have $903,788. That will leave us with an undesignated, unappropriated balance of $2,555,487. And as of right now, this amount is the estimate that we have. We still need to do our year-end close. And once that's completed, we'll come back with that report, I believe, with the unaudited actuals. And I think that we report that to you guys on, I think it's September 8th. So.
And what's important to note here is, one, this top number will change. It will not be exactly this number for sure. It's probably changed since this afternoon when we actually typed these numbers in. And then this number that we see here at the bottom, are unappropriated and undesignated. Some of that is restricted, meaning we can only spend it in certain places, and some of it is unrestricted. And there's more details about that in your packet. But it's not like, oh, you have $2.5 million that you can spend on anything. It's really that some of that is available for consideration and where we would choose to spend that, or if we would choose to save that. And then some of that has to be spent only on particular things. And so I want to clarify that this does not show you restricted and unrestricted undesignated fund balance.
And when that is, though, would that go in that legally restricted programs line?
No, it doesn't. So what's interesting is our reserve, so to speak, takes up a lot of different components into consideration. So the ending fund balance has several components. Has the state mandatory minimum reserves for economic uncertainty. So that has to be 3%. So that's always a line item. It's 3% of our total expenditures. And that's always just 3%. Then there's legally restricted. We also typically, you'll see a line item for our stores in there. So anything that we have, any goods that we have that are essentially assets of the district live in here as well. We just simplified and only picked out the big ones for you. So know that 3% number, it will change, but it will still always be 3% of our total expenditures. Any other questions on this overview? Okay, so here is our multi-year and our budget assumptions with the years titled on the top. And so you'll see we're very conservative in our enrollment projections. And these are actually calculated using an average of our past enrollment. And so as long as our trends stay more or less on par with where they've been, we're still declining enrollment, but that's how we get to these projections. And then of course, ADA is just a percentage of that. We're funded on ADA, not enrollment. And so ADA is really the, when students come to school and what that calculates as. The good news is that programs that are independent study programs tend to have higher attendance. And so they actually bring up our overall ADA, which is good. So then you'll see our unduplicated count percentage. So we do anticipate that it will be higher. It's been as high as 52% in recent years. This year we have struggled to get in our free and reduced lunch form applications, which is how they calculate this unduplicated pupil count. Again, our unduplicated pupil count is our students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch. It's our students who are homeless or foster youth, and then also migrant students. And so they all of those together. And the reason it's called the unduplicated pupil is you don't get additional money if a student is, for example, homeless and qualifies for free and reduced lunch. That's calculated like once. So we are working really hard on identifying those students across the district. This year was just difficult because our food was free to all families, which we are greatly appreciative of. And yet the forms are really important to us from a funding perspective. So we spent hours and hours calling families to ask them to fill out the form. In some cases they did, and in some cases they just said, you know, it's just not important right now because you know, we have free food, or students aren't even in school going to in person. And so it's not something that we need to take the time to do. So we are next year, this will be really critical. We'll be working on a campaign that's at our back to school nights to help our families understand the importance of this. Regardless of just food, there's many other benefits to the district. So we anticipate that'll go up, but for right now, we've kept it at 48% where it is. You can see this is the COLA. This is our super COLA that we have this year, and then our out year, those are the projected COLAs from the Department of Finance. And then these other numbers. Something that I think is always important to note is the employer contribution rate for STRS and PERS. Next year will be almost 17% for STRS and almost 23% for PERS. And then if you look at the out years, particularly in PERS, it goes up to 27%. So that's really significant. So although these COLAs in the out years look great, COLAs really have to cover for the district. They have to cover our PERS and STRS increases, our health and welfare percentage increase, which is down here, estimated at 5%, and also step and column for our employees. And so the PERS and STRS, we've been lucky because those have been bought down in the last few years as part of the state budget. They've been trying to offset those increased costs for districts. But I would not count on that continuing into out years. And at some point we will be paying that true cost of PERS and STRS contributions.
Tiffany, with the unduplicated pupil count, there's a certain percentage, I'm hoping you can jog my memory, that over a certain percentage for the district, we get extra funding beyond that percentage. Is it 42%? Am I remembering this correctly?
Yeah, it's 55. So our so we all have our LCFF base grant, which is how much you get per student. It varies by grade level depending on high school students generally cost a little bit more. So the state gives us more money for high school students. And then there's supplemental funding, which is money that we get for every student that qualifies in an unduplicated count. We get additional money, usually around $2,500 or so for those students, give or take. And so literally filling out that form can increase the revenue to the district by $2,500, which matters when we're talking about 100 or 150 students that have not filled it out. And then at 55%, we get to our concentration funds. And concentration funds, you get significantly more per student, upwards of $5,000. I want to say somewhere around $8,000, but I know it's more than $5,000. So when we're at 52, we're sitting right. We have the students in need, but we're not high enough to get the supplemental, the concentration money that would allow us to provide extra services to them. So we have been right at that threshold for quite some time.
And is there any way for us, I would imagine if we've sat at 52 for a while and we know that families have been hit hard by COVID, is there any other indicator outside of the district to know if there are more people maybe on unemployment rolls, or is there some other indicator we can look at to know what our uncaptured amount of students that should be on this are? Does that make sense?
Potentially, but it's hard because, right, our schools are not reflective of our community as a whole, because a lot of students who would potentially have higher levels of income may choose to go to private schools. And so we can't really take the community numbers because our students who are in our public schools are not the same percentages essentially of that you would find in the community. Does that make sense? So it's a little bit hard to make that comparison between the broader community and our school district students in particular.
But we couldn't find out, for example, how many families in our school district area have ended up on unemployment rolls, or there's no other county indicators like that, right?
They're generally, though, aggregated in a way that would be hard for us to make a true comparison, but we can certainly look into that and see if there's
well, it seems to me, the reason I say it is that it seems to me like we should be above that 52% when we really get the actual forms in, but I'm wondering if my expectations are off, and I was trying to figure out how to calibrate my expectations.
When before I actually got this job and sat in this seat, I was calculating the number of students, additional number of students that we would need to reach 55. And it was somewhere at the time, like, I don't know, 47 additional. It was not that many. But there's a lot of reasons that families may not fill out this form. And so part of our job is to help educate families and really have a concerted campaign that helps people to understand all the services that are available. And then we also we know we have more homeless students than we currently have in our system. And Linda Jordan could speak to this, but I think we have had more homeless students in the past than we currently have identified. And so we have done a really good job this year. Linda has done a good job of training our office managers, training our principals, and in general, training our staff. Because, if teachers notice that a family or a student may be homeless, we can help get them the services they need. And then they would also fall into this unduplicated count. But sometimes our families who are homeless may be less inclined to fill out this paperwork. And so, it's this constant battle of trying to say, we can help you. But I also understand, some of the reluctance to do so. So we're finally, last piece on this is we're trying to look at other ways that we can get these applications. So there's some direct certification. So if families are receiving SNAP benefits, things like that, we can direct certify them. And so really it's a concerted effort across the district and multiple programs to try and identify our families who need additional support and services. Any questions on this?
I just one, and you may or may not know this, just looking at the CalPERS increase rate. 27% is a hefty piece of somebody's check.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any sense of where they're going to top out?
No.
He asks forlornly.
Yeah, no, I mean, it keeps going up and up and up. And, you know, it's interesting because when we first, in education, when the PERS increase happened, you know, we were complaining a lot about it. And then some of the other state agencies like police and fire were saying, yeah, we pay 50% in these benefits. And so, you know, we don't feel sorry for you. So I don't have an answer to that, but I know that there are other agencies and types of PERS employees where the contribution is actually significantly higher than what we pay in education.
So explain that for the public. If someone's making $20,000, it doesn't just cost the district $20,000 to that person. We pay an additional $5,400, something like that, for their retirement plan, right? Which is the CalPERS.
I would have picked a 10,000 number, but yes, so that I can do the math. But yes, so we pay 27%. So for every dollar that we pay an employee in salary, we pay health and welfare benefits, and then we also pay either PERS or STRS increase of, or I mean, contribution of 27%. So if we pay you $1 and you're a classified employee, we really costs us $1.27 plus all your statutory benefits, which would be, you see them in here. Oh, no, they were in one of the prior ones. So, you know, disability and other things like that are on top of that. So we could do a calculation for you and show you for every dollar that we pay employees how much it actually costs the district, but it's pretty significant.
And the reason the number is going up is to fill the debt of their retirement benefit bucket, right? Like they haven't been setting aside over decades. Haven't been, we, or, you know, state funding has not.
Yeah, if I had a chart, I do have a chart. I don't think I can pull it up quick enough, but really one of the issues with PERS and STRS is that when the system was set up, there were 2 people working for every 1 retired person. And so the system really funded itself. We now have an imbalance of that and it's almost switched. And so we have less than 1 person working, like 0.83 of a person working percentage wise for every 1 person retired. And so the system doesn't fund itself anymore because we don't have those 2 people working paying into to cover the retired person. Instead, we have less than a person working. Sorry, it sounds terrible when I say it. Percentage wise, less than a person working to cover that ongoing liability.
I have a question on the unduplicated count, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but what percentage of what percentage of those forms are returned to us? Do you know?
No, I don't know what percentage are returned. I mean, we mailed in a hard copy to every single family this year.
Mm-hmm. So,
you know, many families who don't qualify just simply don't fill them out. So, you know, what's a better statistic, I think, to look at is what percentage of families that qualified last year return them to us this year. And of course, I don't know the answer to that. That would be something good for us to look at in the future.
And then for next year, because we're also doing free food again, it's going to be more just 100% income based and not anything to do with free and reduced, which to me is going to be even more challenging to get people to return that form.
Yes, I am on every state committee. So I'm on 3 different statewide policy committees. And every single time they ask me anything, I talk about this issue because it's, I think, really critical for us. Other districts who have a higher percentage actually have different ways of certifying. And so it's not, so if you're in Oxnard Union, for example, and you have schools that are 75, 80%, they certify different than we do. But for us, it's every single form, every single homeless student, every single foster student matters for us in terms of our reporting and accounting. So yes, it is definitely a challenge for us to consider next year.
Okay.
Okay. Going to, oh, that was the last slide of this particular presentation. Sorry, Katrina, I took your last slide.
Okay. You did great.
Any other questions?
Just in terms of the, obviously we have a vote next Monday on this, so that drive, the Google Drive is still not allowing access to that. So if that can be fixed by tomorrow, so I have the time on the weekend to relook at it, I'd appreciate it.
I wonder, Jane, if you might want to refresh. I'm reading it. It sounds like there have been some people working behind the scenes here on it, and they've been able to open it. So I don't know if maybe if you want to close out of Boardable later and start it again and see if maybe.
Yeah, I'm actually not in Boardable. I'm just in the, let me just go to.
Yeah, Jane, we checked it out and I'm not logged in at all. I'm able to open it, but it took like 20 seconds. So just kind of hovering, let it do its thing and see if that works.
And if you can't, I can certainly email it to you.
There it is. I went through the district website. What a great place to use. Thanks, David.
No problem.
So in some of those public comment questions, those can be, maybe if I have them, I'll look into them and ask the same questions for next week.
Yeah, I tried to address, I think, most of them.
Most of them were covered there.
Yeah. And then now that we know where we are, we will, we've been working on putting this into SACS, which is the document that you see that's the 100 and, I don't know, I can't even look, like the 100-page document that you have, most of which is not actually super helpful to understanding the budget. So we'll now work on making sure that SACS is correct with everything that we showed you today. And then that SACS report will be uploaded tomorrow with the agenda for the 21st. I'm saying tomorrow, it might not be tomorrow, but they'll be uploaded with the agenda for the 21st, whenever that's due. Actually, don't know what day it is, but.
Probably Friday.
Potentially.
72 hours, right?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, Friday evening.
That's even better than tomorrow.
You have an extra day, Katrina and Taiwo. Questions? I'm going to go through the board one by one just to make sure. Kevin?
Yeah, similar to you. I mean, I think the clarity, I mean, it is what it is in terms of the categories not being, particularly reflective of what we think the reality will be. So I don't have anything beyond that.
Michael?
No, I'm good right now.
Rebecca?
just looking in the actual budget in the third year ending balance for the net increases / decreases fund balance, I think it's on page 11. We show a negative in there, and I know it's really hard to predict the third year, but is that an anticipation of cuts, or is that like cuts based on declining enrollment, or?
So that would be deficit spending. So spending from our unappropriated fund balance. If we made no cuts, it would be about that 500,000. I don't have it in front of me. Is it $500,000?
Yeah, it's closer to 400, which is actually very good and very close in the budget world. But yeah, so we're anticipating like decreases over time with the decreasing student population.
Right. So as we have decreasing enrollment, we would potentially decrease the number of students, of teachers who serve those students. We also would hope that we could increase our unduplicated student count, those kinds of things. So yeah, that third out year, to not deficit spend until our third out year is, I think, the best budget outlook that we've had in quite some time. But lots of things change from this snapshot in time on today, June 16th, to 3 years from now on June 16th. So.
Yeah, I have my own concerns about the projected COLAs in the out years.
Yeah.
And I keep hearing this is a very political, the governor's budget is a very political budget with all that he is facing right now. So I'm very concerned about those out years, but I know they get really squishy and hard to predict anyway when you're talking about 3 years from now, right? Because last year we would have never predicted what happened this year, right? So
yeah, I agree. Those are pretty high COLAs, and they assume the same fiscal picture at the state that we have right now.
And everything we're hearing is that we're probably facing a recession because inflation is high. So it's a little scary, but I appreciate the work that's put into this. And I know it's very time consuming. So thank you.
I think I just want to add that in the very short time that I've been here, what I have been told over and over again, which I understand in looking at budgets over the years, that to be fiscally responsible and supportive of our outlook as a district, we have to make certain assumptions, and sometimes they just don't look very good, but we still have to consider them and be transparent about them.
Kelly?
I don't have any questions, thanks.
Yeah, Tiffany, it's been over 12 years since we've had non-deficit spending until the third year out on a multi-year projection. So that's hopeful.
Yeah.
It would make Thane happy. I don't have any other questions. So do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor, Kevin?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
Billy?
Aye.
And Jane? Aye. That passes 5-0. We move on to 6.4.3, the public hearing for our LCFF. Good evening, Marilyn. You're in there.
Before we do that, can we take a quick break?
Hello, I thought we would not be on till 8 o'clock, so this is really a treat. I'm really delighted to present the 2021-22 LCAP tonight. Part of it, and if you've been around for the last 2 cycles of LCAP, you know that LCAP was always very dense, and it was usually around 100 pages. And in 2019, there was an assembly bill that really wanted to streamline the LCAP. So now you'll notice, I think it's 41 pages. So it's significantly easier to read for both staff and stakeholders. So I'm really pleased about that part. And I think you probably noticed it as well. I mean, it doesn't have near the redundancies that we've had in the past. Secondly, this document has to be posted as one document, but it's really 3 documents in one. So what I thought I would do tonight was would be to go over each document separately, and then you can ask questions about that document, and then I'll go on to the next one, if that's okay. So the first thing in your packet you'll notice is the BOP. That's the board.
Marilyn, I'm actually going to pause you for just a second.
Sure.
Because we do need to open a public hearing, but I'm going to have us take a 5-minute break first.
That's a good idea.
And then come back to it. So I have 7:41. We'll come back at 7:46.
Perfect.
Thank you. Your mic is still on, Marilyn, just so you know.
Okay.
Would you like me to pull this document up and screen share it so that we can follow along with Marilyn? Is that useful?
Kelly is nodding yes, so I guess. We're waiting for Michael and Kevin.
Is this the right place, Marilyn?
Michael.
I'm here, but I'm going to have my video off. I've got a little dog problem right now.
Okay. So Marilyn, thank you for pausing. What I wanted to do was open the public comment section and read a public comment. It was helpful on our budget discussions to have heard that comment before we had board discussion. So if I could have a motion to open the public hearing for LCFF.
I'll move to open the public hearing for LCFF.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor, Kevin?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
Shelley?
Aye.
Jane? Aye. That passes 5-0. Our public comment is from Darius Lang. Today's board update goals, section 5B clearly states Parent Advisory Committee, PAC, is being restructured into separate elementary and secondary groups. The last meeting was in February and then officially dissolved on April 26th. According to LCAP, a new PAC was created on May 5th, and parents did not have the opportunity to meet with these folks. PAC names are required to be posted on the district website with contact information. This district does not dictate how the PAC meetings are conducted, and PAC reports directly to the board and superintendent, meaning the superintendent does not provide a narrative of what was reviewed. It should happen today in a public forum. School sites are governed by Brown and, like this body, require an agenda and public notice. School site councils do not replace Parent Advisory Committee. Law noted in LCAP A1, the governing board of a school district shall establish a Parent Advisory Committee to provide advice to the governing board of the school district and the superintendent of the school district regarding the requirements of this article. LCAP quote, this balancing act, as evidenced by the numerous public comments during board meetings, clearly involved an exercise of discretion. On May 5th, the superintendent met with the Parent Advisory Committee that included representatives from low-income families, foster youth, and English learner families as required by statute Education Code 52063A1 to advise, review, and discuss the draft of the LCAP. The level of meaningful engagement was high. This group identified the following items as focus areas to consider in the future. Engage to impact for students and parent training and focus groups, parent focus groups. No written comments were required on the part of the superintendent. However, the superintendent received several more suggestions by email after the virtual meeting. On January 16th, a public hearing was held for both the budget and the LCAP. Okay, now Marilyn, if you could repeat the 3-section.
Sure. There are 3 sections, and I'll go over each one individually, and then we can do questions after each one. I think it might make it a little bit easier to follow along. The first one is the board overview for parents. And Taiwo and I worked on this. I do have to say, much like Tiffany's earlier comment, that it was a point in time. So I think Taiwo and I worked on it on last Thursday. And by Friday, after I turned it into Marissa for the board agenda, it had changed just slightly, but it had changed. So I think right now it's dynamic and will change slightly, but not significantly. So next Monday, when we present the final, it will be final and it will align with the budget numbers also. So the BOPs, essentially, we haven't had it very long. I think this might be the third or fourth year. And it really is to provide some fiscal transparency for stakeholders so they can just see at a glance. And ostensibly it uses language that is understandable and accessible to parents. So you'll see the numbers here. And I'll take questions.
Kevin?
I don't have an immediate question come to mind.
Okay, Michael?
Okay, there's so much here, it's hard to like isolate it down. Because again, Marilyn, you've done your yeoman's work. But I did have just an overall question that sort of was raised to me, and I don't have a really good answer. The amount of money subject to LCAP is, if I'm reading this correctly, around $3 million out of a very large budget. So maybe you could sort of speak to what falls under LCAP funding and what doesn't, and how that's determined.
That's a really good question. I think it's really important for stakeholders to understand that. But when you see the number, the LCFF supplemental, the almost 2 million, there 1,969,000, or yeah. That's the most important number in the LCAP, because that's the number that goes to serve those unduplicated students. And that's the whole purpose of the LCAP, is you need to ensure that you are providing services and programs for those three groups of the three groups: English learner, foster youth, and low income. So I think that's the most important number to keep in mind, that when we are writing the LCAP as a district, we know that about $2 million of that will need to serve our unduplicated students. We spend other funds, Michael, Title I, Title III, and so on, but it's that supplemental line that I think is really the most critical.
Because just to be clear, we don't get concentration funds.
No, we don't, because we're at only 48%.
No, it says both on that line. Only one applies to us.
Could I also add, let me just also add that the majority of our money is spent on salaries and stuff. So you see all this money that you're saying that not in it, LCAP, is a lot of it is just normal, everyday running in the schools, and LCAP would get really, really huge if you just lay out every single thing that a school did. The LCAP is supposed to be for specific things, so it's only just a small portion of the whole running of a school. It's reflected in the LCAP.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Taiwo. I should have mentioned that, and that's at the bottom, that any general fund expenditures that you don't have in the LCAP, and you can see the list of things down at the bottom.
Super, thank you so much.
So I'm not skipping you, Shelley and Rebecca, but Michael's question. So I'm looking at the So maybe I'm a little confused now, LCFF versus LCAP. So the LCAP funding is 2.9 million, Marilyn? Or no, that's just our expenditure.
1.969, yes. Well,
So
no, that's
spending
the
more than,
supplemental. Those are the supplemental funds.
okay. And in terms of the LCAP, the Parent Advisory Committee, that's part of that 1.969 or the?
No, and I think in regards to the public comment, let's talk about the Parent Advisory Committee when we get to the development of the actual document of the plan, because that's where the Parent Advisory Committee comes in with advice and consultation.
Okay, thank you. So I'm back to the going through everyone. Michael, were you finished?
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Rebecca?
I don't have any questions.
And Shelley?
I don't have any questions as of yet. I may come back to you though.
And I think somebody had a question that was emailed someone had a question about the graphics and the visuals, and we're really stuck with the template that CDE provides. You input on a form and then it automatically populates and makes both the circle graph and the pie graph and the bar graph.
Because Marilyn would never produce a document that didn't have consistent use of commas.
That was me, Marilyn. It was driving me crazy. And there was the one pie chart that just,
I know.
It didn't add up to 100%. And yet it was a full circle and that really bothered me. And
I smiled. I didn't know who had written the question. I just smiled because sometimes our hands are tied.
Okay, Marilyn, go ahead.
Okay. The second part of the package is the annual update and the learning continuity plan annual update. Okay, so let me talk about this first. I have to say that when you see the title, Annual Update for the 1920 Local Control and Accountability Plan, that annual update is from actions and services that were written 2 years ago. So all summer we had webinars with CDE, and I don't know if all 1,000 districts were on the webinars, but there certainly was an outcry. Why are we even bothering to do an annual update? In other words, did you do what you said you were going to do in that LCAP? So most districts were a little bothered that they had to spend time doing an annual update on strategies and actions and programs that were 2 years old. So that's what this is. This first thing, the annual update for the 1920 LCAP, is just that. It's an update. Did we do what we said we were going to do in that 1920 LCAP? So it had 4 goals. That's what we had that year. And then you will see the action and then how much we budgeted and then how much we actually spent. So that's what that portion is.
So Marilyn, essentially, we wrote an LCAP and then COVID happened.
Yes.
We didn't have to do an LCAP last year, and we didn't have to do an update last year, so to speak. We did something, but it wasn't this. And so now the state has asked us to go back and essentially for the last 2 years, including COVID, to say, how did we do on what we said we were going to do before we knew that COVID existed?
Yes, that's exactly right. Thanks for clarifying, Tiffany. You said it a lot more beautifully than I.
In normal times, we would have looked at this last June.
That's right. We would have looked at it. We would have looked at it last year as part of the LCAP, but the LCAP for 2021 was waived. So in lieu of that, so we had no annual update for the previous year. we had the learning continuity plan instead of the LCAP. So the next section is the annual update for the learning continuity plan. Are you following me?
Yes, but I can see why the public, because there has been some questions, you know,
Yes.
where last year's LCAP? Well, last year's LCAP was waived, but we did something else. So now they've asked us to.
Yes.
The one we did before and the one that we created for a waived, which wasn't called LCAP, and then.
That's right.
Next one for next year.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And so I'm trying to simplify it. So the learning continuity plan for this year was much truncated. It was not a full LCAP at all. It was, how did you do in-person offerings? How did you do distance learning? What about mitigating learning loss? How did you offer nutritional services and so on? So it really was speaking to COVID. So that's what this is. It's the annual update for the learning continuity plan. Did we say what we said we were going to do? And how did what we budgeted, how did that look when we came out to estimated actual expenditures? And I have to say, when we sat down to budget, and Cheryl and I worked on this, we way underestimated how much we would spend this year. Just as an example, if you go down further, Tiffany, to distance learning. Yeah. Okay. If you notice, we budgeted only 100,000 for access to technology, and we spent almost 4 times that. So you can see we were just way off. And I think we just didn't have experience and didn't know what was going to come up. And it was just uncertain and unsettling.
Also, some things were more expensive than they typically would be. Chromebooks, hotspots, those kinds of things. There was a little tiny bit of price inflation during COVID when everybody was trying to have access to the same exact tools.
Yeah, and if you look at page 44, that gives the final expenditure tables. You can see that we budgeted not quite $500,000, and I think we spent more than double that.
My page 44 is not the same as yours.
Oh.
Well, it's actually page 44 of 44 on the learning continuity.
Yes, it is.
Oh, got it.
It's I think page 51.
Keep going, Tiffany.
Okay.
But anyway, I think it's just emblematic of the year. We just didn't know what to expect. I don't think anyone did. Yeah, there it is. We budgeted 424,000 basically, and we spent, little more than double. So any questions on that portion?
Anyone? I won't call on you individually, but anybody? Okay. Thank you, Marilyn.
Okay. All right. This is really the crux of it tonight, I think, is the local control accountability plan for next year. And remember, it's a 3-year cycle. So this cycle will go through 2024. And this is the first of that cycle. And as I said earlier, it's the template is very much improved. It doesn't have the redundancies that we've had in the past. So I think it just gives us, this plan gives us the opportunity for us to share our story, how we did things, what we did, why we're selecting these programs and services. So, and I think as we worked on this plan and we're thinking, okay, next year is going to be better, I think we, as a district, families, staff, students, all of us were asking ourselves, how do we create strong student outcomes despite the interruption of learning? I think that was kind of an umbrella under which we were operating. Or how do we create strong student outcomes, or how do we support the needs of our most vulnerable learners, to create equitable outcomes? And then a final question that we had to think about as we were writing the plan was, how do we increase students' well-being and create conditions for learning? So that really came out strongly in the stakeholder engagement section. So if you
Tiffany,
want
the
to
screen you're sharing is there. Thank you.
There. Funky.
So if you want to turn to the stakeholder engagement section, there are some errors in here too. And I think part of it is when you work on a computer, sometimes you don't see all the errors. For example, if you go back up a little bit, Tiffany, I think page 3. Yeah, the highlights and the needs. There's some verb tense that I've already fixed. So once again, it'll be fixed by Monday. Okay, in the stakeholder section, since the passage of LCFF in 2013 and our first LCAP, if you were with us back in 2014-15 when we had our first LCAP, we had a small but essential parent advisory committee. And each year we had a parent advisory committee, but each year the statute mandates that our parent advisory committee has representation from low income, English learner, and foster youth who can advise regarding the LCAP. And the statute even says advise both the superintendent and the governing board. And of course, in the district, the superintendent then speaks to the governing board. It's not that the PAC doesn't necessarily speak to the governing board, but the PAC speaks to the superintendent or his or her designee. In fact, I was looking over some past names of parent advisory, and they were an exact microcosm of our district. I think one year we had 10 members and half of them were low income. So they really were a microcosm of the district. This year, I think more than ever before, and if you have been with us a while, you know that if we had a meeting called LCAP meeting, no one would really come. Nobody wants to really look at a dry document. But when we had meetings that a couple of years, Cheryl and I sent surveys out of things that parents might want to discuss. And we would have meetings about those topics, whether it was math or social emotional learning. And we got a much better turnout at those meetings. But this year, I think because of COVID and maybe because it was virtual and easier for parents to access, we had broad stakeholder engagement from not only the required teachers, principals, administrators, other school personnel, local bargaining units, parents, pupils, but community. I think we just had more stakeholder input in this LCAP than ever before. Statute also requires that at some point there is some flexibility in how LEAs, when they meet and how they meet, but there is not flexibility on how a parent advisory committee is made up of, and it has to be made up of those 3 groups that I mentioned. So this year, the PAC was a combined school site council And that was in order to gather input from a real broad representation of each school and have the required low-income English learner and foster youth represented. So that's a little bit about the stakeholder engagement. And I think when you read through it, town hall meetings, I just couldn't believe it. Tiffany had, I think, 30 town hall meetings by March, or maybe even by the end of the first semester. It just was incredible, the kind of engagement that happened this year. And I really do think it was because of COVID and people were very interested. So.
Marilyn, while we're here, I just want to clarify. So I also started an advisory group, which unfortunately was kind of colloquial,
yes,
called the PAC, but was not the same as this PAC described related to the LCAP. So when you think of the LCAP PAC, that is a very specific thing described in statute. The group that was advising me, that I met with 7 times during this year, it really you could think of as like a superintendent's advisory committee, but not related at all to this particular group that is in statute here. Like my advisory committee does not have to have a certain kind of composition. We try to have it representing all schools, but none of the statutory regulations applied to that group.
And I think I wrote that as far as meeting with different groups, that you did meet with a group of parents that gave input. You talked about issues, talked about concerns. We met with guiding coalitions. We met with booster clubs, all kinds of meetings like that, but not the official PAC as in statute that must have those 3 groups represented.
And specifically advise on the LCAP. There's no parent advisory group in statute that's not related to input on the LCAP.
That's right. And you know, it could have been like a superintendent's group or something like that, like you said. But, and even the statute says to provide advice to the governing board and superintendent. Well, as is always the custom, the superintendent then advises the governing board.
Or my representative.
Yeah, or your designee.
So Marilyn, let me ask just quickly about that. So in my experience in the past before COVID was, or my understanding of it was that it's just, you have to get input, and that we kept trying. Remember going to LCAP meetings and there were you and Cheryl and me and the principal at the school, because you tried going to different sites, right? And maybe one teacher. And so you were trying different. I didn't realize there was, besides community input, there's something very specific called a PAC, and it has to have a very specific makeup. So this is the first year I've been.
And we've had that every year. And actually, Jane, there is flexibility with districts on how you meet. I know in some districts, there's a large district where 2 of my grandchildren go, and they meet mostly electronically, sending drafts, things like that. This is the PAC, sending sections of the LCAP or questions. And then one time they meet with the superintendent and give their final say, and the superintendent is required to answer in writing any questions that they might have. And that's the extent of the statute. Members do not have to be publicly posted. I've never read that in statute.
Okay. And then in terms of
members' names and contact information, I've never seen anything posted about that.
Okay. And in terms of, I did read in the statutory, the code, that it doesn't have to be specifically a PAC. It can be made up of other groups that you already have. Like, you don't need to necessarily convene. So is that what we use, the site councils?
Yes, that's exactly right, Jane. A district does not have to form a new committee. You can use an otherwise existing committee as your PAC if that's the most efficient and effective. And in our case, that was the most efficient and effective, to combine the school site councils, because we could get the 7 sites represented. Remember, Summit doesn't have a school site council because they're not Title I. We could get the 7 sites represented, each school represented, and have the 3 distinct groups represented. So that's exactly right. You can use an already existing committee. Any other questions about the stakeholder engagement? I hope I answered the public comment. I jotted notes, but.
Marilyn, just a quick clarification.
Sure.
Using an existing committee that meets the requirements of the PAC under LCAP statute, the way you said the 3 groups, so that how we did it with existing committees incorporated the 3 groups. Is that the English language learners, the low income parents, and the other one?
Foster.
Thank you. Okay, so I did understand you correctly that those 3 groups were represented in the committees that we used.
Yes, and oftentimes, and every PAC we've had every year since 2014-15, our foster youth are always represented by our homeless liaison, who's also the foster youth liaison.
Thank you.
Marilyn, just a couple of things. One is, as you know, like in the past, I have so shared your concern about engagement and the difficulty when you say LCAP. That, as you'll recall, I've at times said, well, let's be very transparent and talk about how many people actually showed up. Because the truth of the matter is it's a hard sell to get people to engage discreetly about the LCAP, because it's so dry and it kind of, and I'll tell you, even now as I look at the LCAP, I find it's at 30,000 feet in a sense. It just doesn't, it's hard to make it have a lot of meaning, for me at least, in the everyday experiences at our schools. Because of just the way the rubrics that it has to fall into. But I do want to clarify. So in the past, we did have actual discrete PACs as opposed to using the school site councils as the PAC?
Yes, correct. This year we did that because we needed, I think because of COVID, and it was just, I think, better to have that full representation. It was hard to get people to fall into those 3 groups that we needed. They already existed. So I think for that reason, we use the school site councils as the PAC.
In a future board meeting, I'm going to talk about, I kind of like the idea of a district-wide as opposed to school-specific PAC. In other words, the SSCs are school-specific, and then they're brought together to look broadly at the district. I am interested in having the district have a PAC. Do you see any reason why it couldn't both fulfill the needs of the LCAP as well as more broadly just be a parent organization to give input at the district level?
Well, I think yes, but we would have to have those people represented.
Right. You have to meet all those statutory guidelines.
That's correct.
In the past, we've had sometimes, just as you just pointed out, with the homeless, it has been very hard to fill that position, right?
Yeah, well, I haven't ever been able to get a parent, so I always have the liaison. And actually, it works out well because the liaison has contact with all those students and knows what they need. And that's really the purpose of it.
Right. Thanks.
I also don't want to lose sight of the whole point of the LCAP, which is for us, right, trying to raise those gaps and even just our own, I think there was a public comment maybe last time about, those numbers of how many people are at or doing at grade level for math or reading or whatever those numbers are, those 35% or I think are they somewhere in here? The baseline versus the actual, not on the money side, but on the
metrics.
The metrics, yeah.
Okay, we could go to goal one. Goal one.
Well, let me make sure I'm not jumping away from somebody else's question on the.
That's all right. When we're ready, we can go to goal one when you're ready.
Does anyone else have questions on the engagement? Okay. Thank you, Marilyn.
You're welcome. I think the input from all stakeholders really, it narrowed down to two things. Cognitive domain and the affective domain. And so the two goals really capture those two areas. So the first goal, and really, if you don't have the first goal, it's really hard to have the second goal, because the first goal is that affective domain. We know how it is with kids. You need to have all those things, climate and social emotional learning and all of that in place to be successful in the academic domain. So actually, we used to have it the other way around, where goal one was academics. But really, I think during COVID, we just, our thinking was changed. And so we switched it around. Goal one is really an important goal about climate and school culture and student engagement. So we were going to look at the metrics. What were you saying about the metrics?
Well, I'm not saying that we have to look at them. I'm just saying that, like, let's not forget that, we want stakeholder engagement for this purpose, for how we are spending these LCFF extra supplemental funds.
That's right. That's right. And one thing we did add, and it's in goal 2, we realized that we really need to call out our student groups. So when we're reporting on CAS scores, for example, when we do get to report on that next year, we've broken out the metrics into the student groups too, so that we'll know how all our student groups are doing, not just the all.
One of the questions that came up for me in looking at the baseline metrics was in regards to the reporting on the dropout rate. And I bring it up because I've heard it several times and I still have to ask the question. And so it occurs to me that it would be helpful for the public to also understand that we being the state,
yes,
has a new way of calculating the dropout rate.
Oh,
which is part of why it's different than it used, that it looks different than it used to be, because the calculation is different.
Go back up to the metrics, Tiffany, and that goal. Okay, it's not exactly the dropout rate that's different. First of all, let me explain. The graduation rate, just for example, if a graduation rate was 90%, some people would think that the dropout rate was 10%. But see, that is not true at all, because graduation rate, I'll talk about in a minute, that's in goal 2. But dropout rate is simply when they leave a program and don't enroll anywhere else. So for example, if a student leaves Nordhoff High School at 18 which is the, you can leave school at 18, and they don't finish, and they don't enroll in adult education, then they're considered a dropout because they didn't graduate in the 4 years. So that's where you get the number for the dropout rate. Now, if we're talking about graduation rate, the state now is, they're doing something called ACGR, adjusted cohort grad rate. So now the grad rate is based on a 4-year cohort. So say you have, I'm going to use an even number, say you have 200 students freshman year, 200 with Nordhoff, Summit, and Chaparral, just say 200. So if you have, say, 2 or 3 students who leave and say, oh, I'm going to just come back for a 5th year, or I'm going to go to adult ed, they are not factored in or I'm going to go to Ventura College, because of course you can go to community college without a high school diploma. So I'm going to go to Ventura College, I'm not going to graduate. So that affects the ACGR, the graduation rate. Does that make sense?
It does. I've heard it from several different people in several different ways, and I think it takes hearing it several times before you remember it. So thank you.
Well, I know in 2018, it was part of the FPM audit, the Federal Program Monitoring Audit, and it was pretty new then. And the biggest thing is when a student leaves either your comprehensive high school or your continuation high school, they need to have written documentation that they're going to another school, or the other school, would request records. It can't just be verbal, something written. It has to be written. And they follow it in CalPads. It's followed, that student is followed. So any other questions about the grad rate? I know it's kind of complex. We can move down to goal 2 if you want, if you have no questions on goal 1. This is the academic achievement. The interesting thing is when we wrote this, and I have to say, this is a compilation of everyone's efforts. It's not mine, it's not just Cheryl's, it's not just Tiffany's, it's everyone, principals, staff members, everybody. And so when we wrote this first goal, the academic achievement, it just fits right into the board goals, just like on the previous goal, goal 1 fit right into several of your board goals. And when we had to say an explanation of that's a new prompt, an explanation of why the LEA has developed this goal, it just fit right in with the current board goals. I think there was a question about, it might have been an email about our math scores and our curriculum.
Yeah, so if you could just explain what the baseline means, 18.4 points below what?
Below standard.
That means 18% of our students?
No, it's below standard. So we used to have it a percent met or not met or nearly met, but this makes it a little more clear. So if you were at standard, you'd be basically like 0. So it might be like 20 points above standard. Below standard is less than what you want. there's some algorithm, and I'm a humanities person.
I'll speak a little bit here, both to the question we had in an email, and then just a reminder that these baseline points, they directly connect to what is posted on the dashboard. And that's a really good place for our stakeholders to look, the Cal Schools dashboard. And so this is a way for basically an average. There's threshold points in the CASP testing system where students meet the standard, or they nearly met the standard. And so the met standard threshold is the center. And so when they take all the average of all the students, we can fall above the met line, the standard, or below. And so in this case, we have fallen below the standard in our math scores significantly. We have been tracking it over the last 4 years that I've been in this role, but even prior to that, when I was principal of TOPA. And the question we had in email is, sort of what are we recognizing this? What are we doing about this? Could it be a curriculum related issue, especially as it relates to the middle school and the high school? And I would say one of the things that we saw between 17-18 and 18-19 is improvement. So we were really excited to see that while we're still below standard overall, we decreased how far we were below the standard. So we are looking at that and tracking that, and we were happy to see at least that we're moving in the right direction. As far as looking at curriculum, that hasn't been our focus point. Not that it couldn't be contributing, but our concern, and we've talked a lot about this in the board meetings, is that we see this happen at a much earlier stage. It's actually happening in 4th grade and significantly in 5th grade. That is where we've seen the drop off in our math scores with our students. And so we have primarily really focused our energy in analyzing what we're doing in 4th and 5th grade. It is one of the reasons that we've brought in Levered as some new curriculum. We're excited to see how our students are doing on CASP or the SBAC this spring, given that they were able to use Levered this year. And then the other piece, and this actually came out of a conversation that we had when Marilyn and I were trying to round up more people to attend our LCAP meetings. We had one that was basically, the subject matter was math in the district. And we talked a little bit about our PLC work at that time, although we were not very far underway. But we had talked about what the research says about identifying essential standards, tracking progress on essential standards, all the work that you would do in PLC work. And that group that included, actually, that was one of our bigger meetings at the time, Marilyn. I can't remember.
Yes, it was.
We're very much in support of that. So I would say the two main approaches that we're looking at right now to improve our math scores is our PLC work across the district, and then really working on the math instruction and content and curriculum in 4th and 5th grade, where we first saw those students really start to drop off in their math abilities. So we're really hopeful that that strong foundation that we're now offering in the elementary school is going to help the students to access their grade level math material at the middle school and high school even more so than they have been able to in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I have a quick question about the baseline. Is that for the unduplicated population of students or for overall all students?
That's all students. And I wanted to mention that because that was in an email this afternoon. This person was noting Nordhoff High School and Matilaha Middle School. And I just wanted to mention that the LCAP is a district document. So we always use district metrics when we can, unless it's something like CCI, College and Career Indicator or grad rate or something like that, that's specific to the high school. But this, Rebecca, is district CASP scores. And the reason we even put them is because, well, we didn't have an annual update. So there was no place to report our 2019 scores. So that's our baseline.
And then when we say the desired outcome is a reasonable growth towards meeting grade level standards.
Correct.
we don't want to use like a more measurable outcome, like perhaps like something with a
A numeric.
5 points per year, closer towards standard,
Not recommended.
Not recommended, huh?
No. In all the LCAP trainings we go to, normally they suggest something like reasonable growth or something like that, rather than some specific numeric.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Or corrections that you found? Did you find any verb tense or spelling?
Marilyn, I think you do an amazing job on these documents. The only other thing I would mention is that I know there's discussion at the state level of reallocating LCAP funds if they're not spent by the end of the school year on the designated populations of students, instead of like they used to let us roll them over into our general fund. And that worries me. I think a lot of districts have a hard time spending all their LCAP, but I just
actually, that's a good point, Rebecca. I think on the last page on the summary expenditures, I think actually we've budgeted more than I think we've budgeted maybe 2.8 for unduplicated, and we're only getting 1.9. So I don't think we're going to have a problem not spending it. But that's an interesting concept.
And is that only, Rebecca, though, for supplemental and concentration funds instead of the entire LCFF allocation?
Yeah, it's only for supplemental and concentration. It's only your LCAP funds, right?
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see if it passes, but I've sat in several meetings where people keep referring to it. I think the Senate is hyped up on that idea.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, it's good to keep an eye on it. If you have any other questions between now and the time I give it to Marissa again, she does something called Boardable, just email me and I'll try and clarify.
Thank you, Marilyn, for your work on this.
Oh, you're welcome.
Could I have a motion to close the public meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, Kevin? Michael?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
Shelley?
Aye.
And Jane? Aye. That passes 5-0. Okay, we move on to, thank you, Marilyn.
You're welcome.
And Katrina and Taiwo, I don't know if you guys want to hang out. We're going on to 6.4.4, which is our approval of the solar vendor.
Yay.
Hi, Alan.
Hi there.
Is there?
I guess I'll just chime in. I think there was a slight error in that it referenced what went out as a request for quote. I saw later, towards just before a meeting, I was looking over the actual document. It's a request for qualifications, right? So it's a little different kind of scenario. Maybe you could talk about, that kind of scenario versus a request for, where you're comparing price. Here, we're not even at the point of price, right?
Correct. And what we're going for here is a design build process that's under Government Code 4217 that allows us to do that. And there are some very specified steps that go through. Now, you can do a request for proposal where you would get a detailed design and a pricing thing, but we're not really to that point with the solar. So what we do is we go for a request for qualifications, and we did that process. We sent the request for qualifications out. We posted it. We advertised it. We had a job walk. We had 7 different vendors come to that job walk. Of those 7 vendors, 3 people actually submitted an RFQ. and we interviewed all of those people twice. We brought in Keith Henderson, who is a friend of the district and works for Balfour Beatty and was the bond manager for Oak Park district when they did solar with another company. And so we wanted his input on it. So David Rogers, Adam and myself and Keith all interviewed the teams that came in from these 3 different vendors. So based on that, we determined that all 3 were qualified, experienced, and competent to do it. We felt that we had the best connection and the most aligned with the Schneider Group, ESCO. And so we selected them as the vendor that we will move forward with. So that's the step that we're at right now. I've spoken with our corporate attorney, and he's comfortable with what we're doing on this part of the process. The next part of the process will be for us to review the agreement that we will ultimately sign off on with Schneider. And a part of that process will be for Schneider to do a design to take us to about 30% of the process of pretty close to the final design. And then we will have public hearings, one public hearing to go over that and let the public have input on what that process is. And then we will sign off on we will have a cost and a price at that point, which everybody can sign off on. And after that, the construction starts, and then the final, and that takes us to 90% of the project. And then the final 10% is the permit to operate and all of the little fine tuning that happens at the end of a project after substantial completion.
I mean, I guess the obvious question just would be, if in the process of determining who's going to be doing a job, you tell somebody they're doing the job before they tell you the price. Sounds like an environment where they could charge you more than they might otherwise have if they knew that they were in a competition.
Yeah, I understand that, but that's where where we're involved with them in the design phase and what the costs of things are. And we do have some preliminary, just sort of based on their history of what they've done in the past, and we've compared that with the other vendors to say, what sort of cost per kilowatt hour on a typical installation like this would you give us as a budget number? And so we have those numbers, and we use those to sort of compare where we're at in the overall thing. We also did, I personally did, followed up on the references of each of them, and called them and talked to the people that they had done work for, and they all got good references, but we got some pretty candid responses too about some issues that came up and how they were handled and that sort of thing. So we're real comfortable with Schneider moving forward, and we do have some ideas of cost and comparing that to what other people's costs are, and actually they're all pretty similar.
And Alan, just to also add to that, when we were originally looking into solar, and we were kind of looking generally, the way in which vendors describe what they're going to do is pretty different. So it was hard to compare across, right? Like you were talking about the price per kilowatt hour, but when we were first doing this, we were getting a lot of different numbers, right? Yes. So it's hard to compare across vendors. So a competitive bid process wouldn't necessarily give us the ability to compare easily across vendors, because the way that they all approach solar and their pricing is slightly different. Is that right?
Yeah, and so one of the things that we're also looking at is the ability of that vendor to help us in terms of grants that are available through the SGIP program with battery sustainability and other grants that may be available to us. And also we're looking at, if we as a district specified the terms of, if we want a solar system that is exactly this, then we could go to a competitive bid process. But we don't know that, and we're not the solar experts. And so we have to do the request for qualification to find out who's really qualified to help us make that determination. And then we'll go for fair market pricing. One of the things that we did ask for Schneider, since Schneider is one of the largest electrical manufacturers and suppliers in the world, we said we don't want Schneider proprietary components in our system. We want aftermarket, over-the-counter components that we can go buy from anybody. And they're fine with that. And they said that about 80% of what they do, the jobs that they do, are done with the open market components, because those components are sometimes better than what Schneider makes. And so that was one of the stipulations that we had in the discussions.
So just so I make sure I understand correctly, that each of these companies really comes up with their own design, and they're very different from each other, which is what makes them incomparable.
Correct. So we gave them a list by site saying, we think it might make sense in this site to have carports. We think in this site it should make shade. Maybe this is a ground mount area, but there's a lot of variables that go into all of those decisions. And so they took our thing and they said, well, we've done our research, and if you put it in this area where you've suggested, you're actually being shaded by a tree for a good part of the morning. I mean, Schneider really did their research on what we had proposed and what they thought was the right way to go about doing some of the things. So so we were impressed by that, and I think as much as anything, we were impressed with the research that they did on our for our account, just on speculation that they might get the work.
So is that what the basis is for choosing them? Is it was kind of a vague term of we clicked with them, but can you help me understand what the criterion was that they excelled at that made you pick them?
I think the two things that Schneider had an upper hand on versus the other ones, and again, they're all competent, they're all experienced, they're all capable of doing the job. And so it does come down to a point of saying, who do we feel that we're gonna have the best relationship with, because it's a long-term relationship. This is not something that goes away. It's a 10-year warranty on a lot of these things, and they're going to be around, and we're going to be working with them. But I think the two things that stood out to answer your question are the fact that the research that they had done, and also they have a student engagement program that is awesome. I mean, they will come out, and it's part of their program. It's not an add-on cost. They come out and they have a whole curriculum of classes that they can teach students about solar and about ecology in general. And they have a person that's in their marketing department that's dedicated to that program. And teachers will come out and actually engage our students and put on classes and teach it. And I thought, you know what, we're kind of about education. That kind of makes sense to me. And so that was a good point. I also feel that Schneider has a very strong team of people that will help us with the grant processes that we can do to help extend the bond dollars that we'll be spending.
So Alan, I'm interested in hearing you talk about that 10-year relationship after it's built, because I have heard of a couple of businesses and schools here in the Valley who, put in a solar from, maybe somebody from the East Coast or somebody who went belly up a year after it went up. And so you have thought about that servicing after it's
absolutely. And we know who those cases are. And in some cases, there's a local provider that had to come in and do the maintenance and operations. You could look at this as a couple of things: the design phase, the construction phase, and then the maintenance and operations phase, which is what goes on after that. The reason I said 10 years because the inverters and the panels the inverters are 10-year warranty. I think the panels are 15, but that's for the warranty part of it. For maintenance and operations, we were also very clear with all three of these vendors. We'll probably hire somebody that we think fits our budget and our thing for the maintenance and operations. And what that involves is basically checking the system over electronically and once a year, to kind of doing an annual inspection on it to make sure that everything is working properly, and then washing them a couple of times a year to keep them clean. And so that's maintenance and operation. We'll probably contract with somebody for that. Something else I forgot to mention was that Schneider has a pretty awesome dashboard that allows us to monitor what's happening, so we can drill down to the actual inverter, and if we're not getting the power that we should be getting out of a collection of panels, we can actually drill down and see which inverter is failing, where the right off of our dashboard, and see where the problems are. And they also have a system of what they call monitoring and V is valuation. So monitoring and evaluation is kind of like an agreement that actually it is an agreement where they will monitor the system for us and tell us when we've got a problem. And they will also guarantee a certain return on the, that we're going to save so much money on our electricity bill because of, the way that it's monitored. That's a very technical thing, and it gets into weather stations and all kinds of things. And I look at that a little bit tongue in cheek. Maybe I'm a little bit, what's the right word? It's escaping me. Anyway, I look at it tongue in cheek because they're going to set the bar where they know they can make it. Let's be honest. And so the valuation, it's not very likely that they're going to be writing us a check unless there's some kind of a major breakdown, which has happened. There was a time 3 or 4 years ago where there was a factory failure of inverters, and inverters were crashing like crazy. And so the company that did it had to go write the school a check, but that's not a very common thing. So we will look at that and probably say we might do it for the first year or two. And after we're satisfied that we're getting the value we need, we're not going to pay them ongoing for to tell us that they did what they said we were supposed to do.
Any questions from the board?
I just have one more follow-up question. I think in the intro, you said that they have worked with other school districts in the area. Did you say that?
They have done about 200 school districts, if I remember right. That they've done. They worked with San Diego School District. They did some in the San Joaquin Valley. They've done quite a bit up in the Northern California because one of their offices is based out of Sacramento. And so they've done a lot up in that area. They've done about 200 schools, not school districts, but about 200 schools.
And you said you followed up on those references.
Correct. It's really been a learning curve. I've enjoyed the last year of doing all this analysis and working it out and looking at the SCE bills and analyzing those. And it's really been an interesting journey.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
A second.
All those in favor, Kevin?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
Shelley?
Aye.
And Jane, aye. That passed 5-0.
Yeah, I want to thank you because we've been going through this solar project for at least a year and a half and looking at doing it. And there were times when we had the green light and then a yellow light and a red light and then the green light. So I really appreciate you doing this, approving that because it's going to save the district a ton of money, and I'm excited for that as well.
I'm grateful to you for doing the legwork on this because I am excited to see our district go solar, where it makes no sense not to, especially now that we've just redone all the roofs and
right.
are ready for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Move on to 6.4.5, the Rock Tree Sky license agreement.
I will introduce this item. This is an update to the license agreement. There's really two significant changes. The first is that because of the number of students that we have attending Summit School, we would like to use some space at Rock in the school building. Currently, the entire thing is leased to Rock Tree Sky, but we have a need for a classroom, and we would like to use the office exclusively for Ojai Unified students. So this is a reduction in the rent paid by Rock Tree Sky in anticipation of those spaces. We actually are working on a plan for additional space up there, maybe portables or some other project. So this is probably not a long-term use of space, but it would be likely through next year. So that's the one major change, and then just an extension of our current license agreement.
Does that last comment mean that even though we're extending the license agreement, we will renegotiate the fee every year?
Yes, that's included in the language.
I think it's important to note as well that as it has been, I think since we've entered into these agreements, we call it a license, but it actually provides either side the right to terminate, basically, I think without cause. So we have that flexibility.
Yes.
And having Rock Tree Sky in the district has brought us many families.
I am going to recuse myself from this because my son is, well, he just stopped going there, but he was attending Rock Tree Sky and Summit all last year. So I'm going to sit this one out.
Thank you. I'll move to approve unless there's other questions.
I'll second.
All those in favor, Kevin,
Yes.
Michael,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Jane, aye. That passes 4 to 1 abstention. Thank you. 6.4.6, the approval of resolution regarding the TRAN funds. This is pretty standard. Did anybody want to discuss it or shall we just move on? Okay, I'll move to approve.
A second.
All those in favor, Kevin,
Yes.
Michael,
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Sorry, I went backwards to Rebecca.
Aye.
And Jane, aye. That passes 5 to 0. 6.5.1, board goals, end of year report.
Find my screen sharing for you. So this is an extension of the mid-year report of goals that you saw. These were the goals that you set for this year. Our next step after reviewing these goals, not tonight, but in the future, is to set goals for next year. You'll see some of these goals actually no longer apply because they were specifically COVID related. I will not go through all of these, but you can see that we had a goal of whole child, looking comprehensively at students. So we had a few things that we worked on: family fund, restorative justice. We worked really hard this year on mental services to students. This is an area where next year we will be utilizing COVID funds to help support our MFT interns. Those used to be funded through help of OHI. They will no longer be funded. So we will be able to support it with COVID funds, and then we'll have to make some programmatic decisions about if that's something that we want to continue. But for this last year, you can see that we provided significant services to students. We also implemented a new system called the Beacon Alert System. So when there is active suicide planning or ideation, we get an alert 24/7. They call, there's a chain of people that they call, and if those people don't answer, they actually call the police, who go out and do a wellness check. So we had 56 Beacon alerts relative to self-harm. Most of those were cleared because they were not deemed to be real, but we did have some cases in which the police or the CERT team or someone else went out to the house to support the student and prevent self-harm. We have our parent support groups. Continue to work on the Guiding Coalition. As I mentioned, we have our the Guiding Coalition on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion was happening all year, but the Wellness Guiding Coalition has just been restarted. So next year you would see an annual report from that Guiding Coalition as well. And then just other progress. We're really proud of the meal services that were provided to our families during COVID through the help of our Nutrition Services Department, which has been very active this year and working hard on really making sure our community and our students are fed regardless of if they're at school or at home.
Student achievement, this is a little bit harder to measure this year given where we are with our state testing, but we had a goal to work on our PLC work, which we have been doing. We have mathematics, as you heard in our LCAP presentation, is an area of focus for us. So we implemented Levered. We are looking forward to our data relative to Levered and potentially looking at if there will be pilots in other grade levels. We have our RAFT program, which is for reading. It's a structured literacy reading program at all elementary sites. We don't have our grade level data, but we will be giving an academic update in the fall that'll have our SBAC scores as well as this RAFT data. And then when you saw this at mid-year, our GATE training had been on hold during COVID, but it has been occurring this week. So 8 teachers have attended the GATE training that was held at Matilaha this entire week. So we're excited about that program being implemented. This was about quality distance learning. We obviously did distance learning at every site for as long as we needed to. But one of the outcomes is that our parents and staff generally really appreciated the use of Canvas, and our teachers built courses in Canvas and don't want to go back to not having those courses available and for use in Canvas. And so we're going to continue to use Canvas throughout the district next year. It does provide some additional insight for parents where they can track assignments. And, there are some glitches and things that definitely we will work with the developers to improve, specifically around the mobile app. But in general, for parents who would like to be more involved on a daily basis, it provides access for that. The other thing about Canvas is that it's used almost exclusively. It's the learning management system that's used at our colleges throughout the state. So when our high school students are familiar with the platform, we feel like that'll be helpful for them when they go to college and are already familiar with how to utilize Canvas on a daily basis. Any questions so far? Okay. Innovation, we worked really hard to have access to all families. For the internet, we have hotspots. These hotspots were available to anyone. They didn't require, for example, the free and reduced lunch form. Anyone who needed a hotspot, if we had one available, we gave one. We had times where they were out, not just for us, but across everywhere, there were no hotspots. And then we would get them in and hand them out. When our internet was down district-wide a couple of weeks ago, I think we had one available in the entire district, one left. So we handed out everything that we had. We used the one district hotspot to get payroll done that day. So everybody got their paychecks. So we're glad we had the one.
Tiffany, along those lines, we've given them out. Did we loan them out or did we give them out? Do we expect to receive them back? What does that look like?
We loaned them out. The real cost of a hotspot is not the hotspot itself, it's the ongoing service. And so at some point we will stop paying for the connectivity. And so it would be great if you brought it back because it won't be useful to you anymore for very much at that point. Anything to add to that, David?
No, you nailed it. Yeah, we got the hotspots for free, but we were, paying quite a bit for the service itself. But yeah, and our last day will be, I think, the 17th of this month.
Yeah, and then it'll no longer be functional. So
yeah.
If we have them back, we'll just find a way to recycle them or send them to the company. So, because we don't.
Is there a potential that they would be needed by some students next year? Is there a reason to redistribute them to other students or no?
Maybe we would want to do an analysis of the ongoing costs and cost to benefit ratio. I mean, sometimes families have them because my internet is a little bit slow, but we would need to think about if that is significant of a problem for us that we would pay ongoing fees for that. If there's no internet, that's something different. So something definitely for us to look at and plan for over the summer for next year. So device inventory, we handed out a lot of Chromebooks, deployed a lot of Chromebooks. Jake and David and the whole tech team spent a lot of time putting those Chromebooks in place. So that was great. We also, oh, sorry, there must be another one that's about technology. I was going to say, we also had so many tech tickets. It's mind blowing how many tech tickets we answered. I know because I see everyone that comes through, and there's a lot. In terms of expanding programs, so at Chaparral High School, we started Lapidary at Nordhoff High School. We have esports and Hall of Characters at Matilla. We had Drumline, as you saw earlier in our standing ovations. Cheer, we piloted the Power program, and then we joined the National Junior Honor Society. And then at elementary, we started Math League, as I mentioned earlier. Something just to add down here at the bottom, where we were working on CTE pathways and capstone activities. As I showed you in the superintendent's report, the farmers market is a great opportunity for our students to have some capstone experiences. They can work as interns in our booth, or they can sell, make and sell their own products in those booths. So that's really an opportunity for us to help students who are entrepreneurial in nature to have access to someplace where they can sell that. And then we have 3 teachers who are completing summer externships, meaning that they're going to work or be in a business over the summer so they can ensure that their programs are relevant to the current CTE work that's happening in the workplace.
So those externships are specifically CTE related?
Yes.
And I just wanted to clarify, because I'm sure Mike Donahue would kill me if I didn't. It's the Hall of Character and Achievement.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I?
You say Hall of Characters, which sounds also pretty interesting.
Yes, you're right. That should say character and achievement. Thank you. So working on flexible options for families, which I presented to you at our last meeting. So having online options for families who'd like to continue with online learning, expanding Summit so that we can accommodate students. I don't believe at this time we have a wait list. Is that correct, Cheryl? Right. So we've been able to accommodate all students without a wait list. And also Summit is WASC accredited. So all of our students who graduate now have a valid WASC accredited diploma. Our summer school programs we actually had to shut down our enrollment in our elementary program at way over 300. I think we have 350 applications for elementary school right now. And we went through our summer programming for secondary, and I think there's only one class that didn't have enough students to run this summer. So we're excited about that. And then next year we're looking at expanding arts program at Matilla as an additional elective. Arts or dance, one of those, performing arts or art. Looking at equity, this is one goal where we just weren't able to really get data on an achievement gap analysis, but we're looking forward to doing that in the future. And then some of our other equity work is still in progress through the Guiding Coalition. And then I've already mentioned these 4C in the Guiding Coalition presentation. One thing that I was really proud of this year is that we did a phenomenal job of translating documents that came out from the district office. And that's really a team effort. There's a lot of times where you're trying to get something out quickly, or you have a chart. And boy, we produced a lot of charts and a lot of slides during COVID. And as a team, we all collectively were like, is this translated? Let's make sure it's translated. Let's not put anything out till it's translated. So we did a really good job of, I think, providing all of our information equivalently, regardless of the language that you speak at home. I think I mentioned already all of these. Looking at, and feel free to stop me if there's one you want me to talk about. I'm gonna skip, we've talked extensively about all of those. Continuing to have regular engagement with the PTOs from the site principals who sit on every PTO. I participate monthly in OEF. The bottom, you see we have a tremendous increase in engagement on social media. I find this website page views to be kind of stunning with, you know, 100,000, more than 100,000 views since July 1st last year. Although if we were to put Stephen Adams' pictures of Matilaha on there, it would, you know, double by tomorrow, I'm sure. Other progress, just the murals, the Eagle, other partnerships. We also started this year our TKK Save the Play Date, which was great for our incoming TK and kindergarten families to get to know each other and socialize and bring their students on campus, and also a way of us just getting to know them before they enroll in our schools. Other community partnerships, people that we work very closely with. Opportunities for engagement. So for parents who wanted to engage at the district level, we had 34 town hall meetings, 7 parent advisory committee meetings, meaning the superintendent's parent advisory committee, 21 guiding coalition meetings, 1 coffee and conversation, 1 coming up again next week. So that'll be a regular monthly occurrence. Community pool advisory committee meeting, Nordhoff master plan stakeholder meeting, and then 4 a place at the table events. So all together, in addition to our 24 board meetings that we will have held this year, we're somewhere in the 70s in terms of, you know, 75, I think, opportunities for families to engage at the district level beyond just the school site council.
I just want to jump in and say how grateful I am to just general community members who are a part of our guiding coalition. So it means a lot that we have the community support there, and broader than just our parents and families in the district, that there's a lot of people outside of the district that are involved in those, and I'm really grateful to see that.
Just other informational presentations that we did. Yeah, this is 23, but we have 1 more next week, so we'll be at 24. We did not do our student surveys this year because of COVID. It just, we couldn't figure out a way to include both our distance learners and our in-person learners. And so we will pick that up again next year. We did site walks multiple times, tracked all of our improvements in Trello, added future improvements. These are all kind of COVID related. In this bottom one, I'm really excited about some of the work that we've done in terms of making our campuses accessible and great places for the community to use. And really excited about some of the upcoming projects. So still working on the community pool, disc golf course, and just other projects through Measure K, particularly all the field improvements that are coming up. So we have a lot of impact, not just on our families who use the schools, but on our community who can use the schools outside of school hours. These are all things that we have talked about. Actually, this last bullet here, we are working on a Matilaha master landscaping plan. If you've been to Matilaha recently, it's a little hodgepodgey in terms of the landscaping, and it doesn't have the same facilities improvements that Nordhoff is going to have. But we do need to do some work on the quad where students spend a lot of time that's not super shaded and needs some better paths of travel, things like that for students. So we actually surveyed our students, our group that's working on that plan, went in and last week talked to students live in person and asked them questions about what they thought with different potential landscaping plans. So we're excited to see the results and analysis of our student feedback on how they would like to see their campus look in the future. And then also a survey out to parents. some safety improvements that we did that you've heard in our bond updates. An area for us to work on next year is continuing to work on defining job duties and priorities in all of our maintenance and operations areas. And these are our maintaining the fiscal health. We did add just recently the internal controls analysis that was conducted by an outside consultant to help make sure that we our systems and processes are tight and that there's no room for any kind of bad behavior. And then finally, I just added this one. This isn't a board goal, this is my goal, but I added it to the presentation because I was making it. And this is just working to actively support a positive culture. That's something that's really important to me. It's been really hard, of course, to do that during COVID, but just a few things that we have done, even in COVID, to help district-wide work on the culture for staff. I love that we've had 344 standing ovations this year for staff. Just other things that we do. I write monthly kudos cards, things like that. So that's it.
Thank you, Tiffany. I know we discussed those mid-year, but it's always nice to just kind of circle back and to know that, you know, I think Shelley mentioned it last time that we had been talking about doing something like that for a couple of years and had not implemented it until you pushed that as important. And so I really appreciate that. There's a comment I had written when I was reading through the LCAP, and I forgot to mention it, but when you were talking about community values, I thought of it. And I just wanted to thank the district for the childcare options that you all tried to create for after school for our TK and K and first grade throughout the year. It was really difficult, and I know we couldn't accommodate all grades, but it was really important that we did that. So I appreciate that.
I just want to thank you for collecting all of the data. I know it's hard to collect the data, to digest it, and then to present it, let alone doing it. And so this is probably the most detailed we have ever seen since I've been on the board of what's been going on and how it aligns to our goals. And so I really appreciate all of the work that I know went into this.
The team really did that. I shared these out with everyone, David, Katrina, Cheryl. They've all been working on these data pieces for the last weeks and weeks and weeks. Definitely not just since Monday, but.
I would just add that, you know, this year has been an incredibly difficult year. I think every educator I know has had the hardest year of their professional careers, and to continue to make progress towards goals during time when we're just trying to figure out how to teach kids again from scratch, is very impressive and very much appreciated.
I would agree with that, Rebecca, and just want to say a general thank you to the district at large for all of the work that has gone into this year. I don't know how many teachers are spending their summer right now watching a school board meeting, but if they're out there and still watching, I'm very grateful to our staff, our teachers, our classified staff, everybody who worked so hard this year to get us to improving those goals and to working towards all of that we've done. So very, very appreciative.
Thank you for the hard work.
So we'll move on to our final 6.5.2 future agenda items. Is there anything anyone would like to add?
I don't have an agenda item. I'm going to kind of commandeer this for my board report that I failed to do at the beginning of the meeting, and say that that I hope if there are any parents out there still watching that they got the email about the 4th of July parade and will fill out the form and join us for our entry in the parade this year. Looking forward to it.
I didn't get it, so you'll have to tell me about it. Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to join us, Jane, come in and walk with us in the parade.
Thank you, everyone. That's the end of our meeting. We will see you again on Monday for the final votes on the LCAP and the budget.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.